think we need a motion to adjourn. WPCA. All right. Chris, second. Michael, all in favor of adjournment? Aye. Ready. Ready? Okay, let's call the meeting to order, please. Judy, if you could do the roll, then we'll see.
All right, Judy Neville, Tom Schulte,
Here.
Amy Carroll's absent, Todd Lavieri, Michael Finn, Chris Labrie,
Here.
Victor Alvarez,
Here.
Maria Weingarten, Bob Hamel,
Here.
Colin Dobbin,
Here.
James Yao is absent, and our first selectman, Kevin Monahan. Do we need to seat Amy? So do we need a motion for Colin?
Yes, a motion for Colm
All right.
to replace Amy Carroll, please.
So moved.
Chris, second. Michael, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none? Okay. Thank you for that. Motion to approve our May 9th minutes.
So moved.
Tom Schulte, second.
Second.
Maria, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Good.
Abstain.
Abstain, yes. Thank you, Chris. Okay, first selectmen's update, please.
Because I wasn't here. I didn't vote, but I should say I.
Two
abstained.
abstentions.
I should say I abstain. Yeah. All right.
Over to you.
I only have a few items. Good evening, everybody. And Waveney House bathrooms are coming along. I don't think they're going to be done by the end of June, but they look very good coming along. We started the Waveney House elevator today. And that should be finished by. Right, so
If anybody heard that, 60 days in the shaft,
Shaft.
the elevator shaft will be
Right.
complete.
Waveney House service area, as you may have noticed, is underway jointly with the Waveney Park Conservancy. And Lapham Center CHP is sitting there awaiting the installation of gas to the park, which has been delayed for some personal reasons at Eversource. And 220 Elm is underway and on schedule for the Board of Ed. The Playhouse you'll hear about later. So and the PD project also. Are you getting an update tonight on PD? Oh,
July meeting.
that was pushed to July. Anyway, that's
It's too much for tonight.
right. But the building committee is on schedule. And then finally, our major road repairs have been delayed somewhat by some technical issues with some of the roads, and but we'll get underway in the next few weeks. And there's a major project starting on next week when school gets out for the 36-inch Aquarium water line on Route 106 going into Wilton. That will be a major disruption for the town. The Land Trust signed their purchase and sale agreement for 1124 Valley Road, and they'll start the process next Tuesday with the Board of Selectmen to ask for the LFA funds, LAF funds. The ACUA program continues to succeed. As we talked about, the second year is funded, and people are very happy with the results there. Metro North shutdown. It seems like 97% of our commuters, maybe 98%, are driving to Darien, Roten Heights, or other locations, and they're finding parking. I just hope they come back someday. But parking in the Roten Heights and Darien are first come, first serve, and they seem to be finding parking every day. There's space available, but so that's good news. And then finally, the UC, the new Utilities Commission, was appointed and will have their first meeting on Thursday night to begin the review of cell service. So that's what I have. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so Tiger, you've got the next two topics, one on the New Canaan Athletic Foundation, the other on the Playhouse renovation. While he's coming up, just a little bit of a headline on our agenda tonight. So we will discuss the Internal Services Fund. I've gotten feedback from the superintendent. I'll share that with everybody. We'll do the financial update, of course. We'll do the mill rate. Ann's got some bond transfer things to discuss. And then we do have an executive session with the superintendent. So I want to make sure everybody understands that. We will go out, we'll go to executive session. We'll have that meeting on it says security. And then we'll come out, and if we approve, we'll vote on whatever we think we might need to do there. Just want to make sure everybody understands that. Okay?
And Brian is on now.
Yeah, okay. So Tiger, New Canaan Athletic Fund, I think we probably had a couple of questions around the money that would be needed for this coming fiscal year. And what will we have done as a result of that? What do you expect to be done in fiscal year 2024, ending literally 12 months from now? And then any other updates on the project?
Okay, so I'll give you, since the last time we were
Tiger,
here,
pull the mic.
Yeah.
it's never happened before. I'll give you an update of where we stand on the project. Right now, the Board of Selectmen approved the development of design development drawings. Basically, that's the last phase. So they're working through those documents at present. We were working off schematic documents, and then once you go to schematic design, you approve the schematic design, you go to design development, which includes the bidding phase. So they're working through that. Subsequent to that, we went to the ZBA for zoning variances associated mainly with the fact that Waveney is parcelized. Okay, so Dunning Stadium sits where it is, but it sits very close to one parcel line of Waveney from one parcel line to another. And because we're developing it and we never had asked for a variance prior, ZBA asked us, or the town attorney said, make it all legal, copacetic, and come and ask for the variances. So each one of the buildings that we're proposing to do any of the work that you had seen, that entire plan went to the ZBA for approval based upon that. So we had setback requirements, things of that nature. And then we had coverage requirements. Believe it or not, the stadium and the high school sit on one parcel, and we're over coverage mainly because of the high school, right? So the high school takes up all the coverage plus anything we do to Dunning just brings us over that edge. But if you look at the entire Waveney itself as a campus, because you can't necessarily tell the difference, you don't know where the lot lines are, we're well under coverage. So the ZBA approved that. Then we went to P&Z for an overall plan for not just the site plan, but for every single building that you had seen. So the press box, the entry, the donor wall, the entryway, concession stand, bathrooms, home and away. And we received approval for the project in total with several conditions. One of the conditions was to revisit all the landscaping because they didn't like landscaping selection. That's fine. Another one was the existing concession stand, the roof treatment on the existing concession stand was not the same roof treatment as all the other new buildings. So they asked us to treat that roof so that when you're looking at it, they all look the same and there isn't one that's left out, so to speak, and there wouldn't look like it was, it looks like an entire cohesive design. We were looking at it from a standpoint of cost savings. They were looking at it from a standpoint of design. Won't necessarily drive the cost that high, but it does change the number slightly. And then, excuse me, the other one was they wanted to see a schedule of activities, construction schedule, for the area and how we would use the area to make sure that we wouldn't impact the schools and we would be able to construct what we want to construct where we want to construct it. And then the last one was mainly based around the circulation portion of it. They want us to expand the traffic study, which we were going to do anyways, because that was a discussion from the BOE. The BOE wanted to see that from their side, and then come back with that traffic study and complete that traffic study before the end of this calendar year, before December of this year, January next, and then have that approved and vetted and approved by the BOE. So those were the four conditions that they had associated with it. The architect's already working on 3 of the 4, and then we'll hire the traffic consultant to take care of the 4th one, meet with the BOE, go forward from there. And the only other thing we need to do is we need to go to the BOE at their next meeting to make sure that they're okay with the improvements on Dunning Stadium, because that's part of the MOU. So we'll go there. Dr. Lutzi asked us to go there, so we'll go there next week and hopefully gather their approval. And then at that point in time, we'll go forward. We've been talking to Turner Construction about having them come on as a construction manager, similar to what they did for the library and what they're going to do for the police department, or what they are doing for the police department. So and given the fact that this is a multi-phased project with multiple buildings, it's probably a very good idea to have them come in and help us work through that phasing over multiple years and the commensurate problems with supply chain issues and things of that nature. One of the reasons why the press box is being pushed to next year as it stands. So what we plan to do this summer is the entryway and the donor wall. So basically that entrance to the stadium itself would be constructed during this summer after graduation and then before school comes back into session. Mainly because the press box and the electrical gear for the press box will not be available and it's on a long lead time. And then the thought is that we will run through the football season and then come right after the football season, after Turkey Bowl, we'll come in and start doing the work for the press box and the site work. And that will run all the way through till June of next year, graduation of next year, and will be done before graduation of next year because they utilize the press box for the sound equipment for graduation. So that's our construction schedule as it stands right now. The costs, we haven't changed from our value engineering summary that we had given you at present, only because they're finishing the design documents and then we'll bring on the construction manager and then we'll be able to dial in the numbers a little bit closer. But the overall initial phase, if you want to call it phase 1A, which would be the existing concession in the donor wall, is approximately $570,000. And the NCAF has the majority of that money, if not all of it, available. They have $500,000 plus available at present. And then the remaining portion of the work, that press box, is approximately $2 million. And then we have an additional million or so, $1.5 million left for site work to take care of the next phases, meaning the concession stand, the home bathrooms, things of that nature, to then, so that we don't build on top of ourselves twice. And work our way out of the site and be ready for the next phase or the phases thereafter, and then be able to build on top of it. So that kind of gives you an idea of the entire $4 million expenditure by June of next year, June of 24.
2 million is in hand of that. What you just said, 2 million for the entrance.
question.
How much is
They
in-
have right now, they've got 500,000 plus in hand. And that's
For
what,
the
that's that
donor
first
wall.
phase for the donor wall and the concession stand.
Oh.
And that's what we would be looking at. We have $579,000 slotted for those two projects. That's a, I believe that we could probably do better than that number. But they have that money committed. And then at that point in time, they're working towards the remaining portion of the monies for the press box and gathering those funds. But we wouldn't go forward. That's one of the reasons for a phased approach, is not to go forward with the next. And we would then add that to Turner's contract as we go. Each phase would be added to their contract. So there wouldn't be a situation where monies are not available for a contract that's out with a contractor.
So Turner Construction, when they did the library, they used this Design for Freedom. And so are you going to be using Design for Freedom for Dunning and the police station?
Probably not. No, that's a
Actually,
little.
the library is the one who decided to
Right.
use Design for Freedom
So
not
it
Turner.
adds a little bit,
Simply
to
to carry out the library's instructions.
right.
Right, but now they're able to do it. They have the suppliers that enable them to.
It's
and-
that would be a discussion, at least on the side of the, I'll speak for the police department. That's a building committee decision at that point in time as to whether or not they want to go that route. There is a cost, to that. It's not a savings, it's a cost. Given the tight value and nature on the Dunning Stadium side, we can certainly speak to them about that, but I don't know if that would be the avenue we would take either. I would be looking to try to save the money on the side versus not necessarily.
So
But
yeah,
to Victor's point, I think it's something to look at. It's a cost, additional cost, but it might be the right thing to do these days.
Yeah, in these
Yeah, in
times. yeah.
times.
We
to
can
really
ask
look.
him and I can tell you what the differential would be, but as far as on the police department side, there's a building committee. That building committee makes that decision. On the Dunning side, I can certainly ask him to take a
Yeah.
look and see what that difference
That'd
might
be
be
good,
and
yeah.
tell you exactly what that difference might be. We have no problem with that.
see if it impacts the timing,
Excuse me?
if it impacts the timing.
That's right. Two separate issues
Just
going
cost and
associated with that.
time.
Cost and time, right? And sometimes, one time is cost, actually.
So you have that timeline and spending in a form you can share with us, or it's just on paper?
That's just on paper.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to repeat it.
Absolutely. So we were looking at the first phase was the concession stand and the donor wall.
Mhm.
slated at approximately $570,000, $580,000. Excuse me, and that's this summer. And then starting in November, post Thanksgiving, post Turkey Bowl, we'll come in and start the press box and the site work associated with the press box, the home bathrooms and the proposed home bathrooms and the proposed concession stand, new concession stand, I should say, and run that through. And the goal was to finish by graduation of 24. So
When would
June
the
of
site
24.
work would start at the same time as the press box?
Yeah, it would have to.
Okay.
You know, the way that the piping is currently phased to run, it runs out across the area where the new home bathrooms would be and the new concession stand is planned. So the thought is to then try to do everything in one shot and get that at least roughed out for the next phases.
So when you say in the first phase, it's donor wall and concession stands.
Correct. The
Would-
entry, you're right, the donor wall and the entryway, which includes the existing concession,
So
renovating the existing concession.
But they're going to be turned into what, storage
The existing concession will remain
for
you know,
now?
For now. And the bathrooms will remain for now. And then at the end, when the concession stand is reinstalled, then that area will be reconverted to storage area for Booster Club, things of that nature.
All right, so what's actually being built is the donor wall and the entry gate.
That's correct.
And Tiger, so the phase two, which is the press box, right?
One A, yeah.
Or one A,
Yeah.
which begins, say, after Thanksgiving. Is there a level of confidence that the traffic study be done by then?
I can have it done if it's a requirement. Yeah, I didn't really, I was looking at having it done, everything wrapped up by P and Z by the end of December, you know, traffic study, what have you. That the press box doesn't necessarily bring in any additional traffic. It, you know,
I just assumed all of those were conditions of the approval you would need in order to start, but you're saying. that's not
no, I need to have it's a condition. Interestingly enough, it's a condition for the permit, but I can't start I need the permit prior to being able to start. So it's a condition that I will get there, you know, that they understand that by the end of the year, I'll have it. So if I don't get it by the time I get the permit, I can't get the C of O. So it's one or the other. I'll get the permit to build it, but I won't
see.
have the C of
They'll
O.
give you the permit as long as you can tell them that they've started, they're looking at it,
Right.
they'll have the final one. I see.
And I'll have the
Okay.
final, and then it'll be a condition of certificate of occupancy. So I'll have a building that I can't utilize.
Understood.
So
And what's the cost of the second phase? Or one A?
1A is the press box is approximately $2 million plus $1 million or $1.5 million of site work. It's really, you know, that was the town's contribution at that point in time.
So Tiger, two thoughts for you. One,
Sure.
I guess what I'm hearing, this was on the agenda because we had approved $2 million, but we didn't have all the facts yet.
Correct.
And one of the conditions, and I'm pretty sure this is true, and Tucker, you can confirm this for me, was that the money needed to be in the bank.
Correct.
Is the 2 million in the bank on the other side?
I can't answer that question, but I believe that he's got $500,000 plus in the bank and then he's gathering in the rest of the pledges for the remaining portion of the
So,
money.
so what I'm hearing is that 1A on the donor wall is all going to be funded privately. That's the 570.
Correct.
So you don't need town money technically till November.
I might need some. I don't know exactly how much I'll need, but you know, the thought was that it would be a 50-50 split, but if you like it where it all is upfront cost from the NCAF, you can do that as well. I just don't know. I can't speak for exactly how much money Mike has.
Well, we set a criteria to have the money in the bank. Sounds like that's not met. On the other hand, and bending over further backwards, we don't really need to put any money into this thing until the fall. We can't give
Close.
money if it's not
Right.
there. So, but, and you'll have P and Z, or you'll have the traffic study, those things, there's conditions for, we don't want to start something that can't get finished, right? We can't start we can't start on that work until we have the approvals. Period. I mean, you know, there's maybe some things that can be done, but it can't be right. You can't commit or spend reasonable money until November.
Correct.
All right, so sounds like we're coming back together again because until those conditions are met, we can't free up the town side.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So if they're at,
We can't show up with 2 million today if they have only got 500,000.
except we'd only be letting $580,000 worth of the work, the entry wall and the donor, the
Yeah.
entry way and the donor wall. That's what we would be
And
letting.
that's privately funded.
Okay.
Remember, town's doing bathrooms, town's doing things that nobody wants to raise any money for. That's fine. And we don't, I think that was what it was all about, right?
That's fine.
So.
I
so-
just want to know what the parameters are. I'm fine.
Well, they haven't changed.
That's fine.
No.
We
that's-
said all the money needed to be in the bank.
Mhm.
Maybe it's there. I don't know if Mike could tell us. If it's not, which it sounds like it's not. Again, okay. But we can't put funds to work until those criteria are met, meaning money in the bank and then the other related town approvals for us to be able to
Mhm.
proceed. We can't proceed and have a hole in the ground and stop. So we want to make sure we're ready to go. Sounds like we'll be there.
We could not, our rules don't allow it, where I could not let that second project out without having the remaining
course,
funds
right,
available
that's
for it.
right.
It will be, I can't speak for the NCAF. I know he has $500,000 plus. Whether or not he's going to have the entire amount to do this first phase 1A at the time that it starts. If you say that that's a requirement, then that's a requirement.
It's a requirement.
Okay,
I
that's
mean,
fine.
well, he gave it to us. He said the town has to, nobody, he can't raise money for bathrooms, quote unquote. We can't raise money for traffic patterns for the school. We all agreed to that. That's totally fine. But the town money shouldn't go to the donor wall, right? That's the point. So I think it was $2 million committing to where we should have obligations to pay.
Mhm.
With the conditions being, like you said, the town approvals have to be in place and then the rest of the funds need to be in place, which maybe by November that'll happen.
Right. So if you, to that end and to Tom's point, then I'll start the traffic study now so that that'll be done and I'll get the Board of Ed done. So by the time that we come back, for a
September,
November
October.
start,
Yeah.
October, November start, I'll have that completed or
Okay.
hopefully completed.
Okay.
I can't say I will,
Yeah, I don't think anything's changed for us.
That's
We're
fine.
paying for the town related items. I think we agreed to that. I think we agreed that they had to have their money in ready to go. And it sounds like none of that needs to happen now for a few months because of the way the schedule is sorted out. The donor wall can get going. Everything else has to wait till the football season's over. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Is the only requirement left for the summer work, the MOU to be reviewed by the BOE? Is that that's all that's left?
No, the only other thing I have is I have to have a schedule of construction activities by the end of June,
Well, that, yeah.
for P and Z.
Oh, we have to
um,
go back to.
No, I
P&Z?
don't have to
You
go back
just
to
have
P and
give them the
This gets,
schedule?
it gets submitted to the assistant planner,
All
the
right.
town planner. She reviews it, it would be developed by the design engineer and by the construction manager.
Okay.
And as long as it meets our approval and Sarah's approval, then Sarah can then check that box and say that she received it. So the project would then be able to go forward at that level. And then to the other point, we have that secondary stop of the traffic study.
I mean, be clear, we've budgeted it. So the town side is there.
Mhm.
We budget, so that's not a concern. It's just that we can't trigger it until we have those other criteria met.
That's fine.
Okay, and then you answered my question before, but just to make sure that the board knows, there was a debate on the range of the capacity to size all the bathroom facilities and everything like that. So have you did they come to an answer to that?
Yeah, so we'll be hitting a sweet spot between the large lacrosse, soccer, field hockey match and the football, the standard football, the average football of 1,400 people. So somewhere in that range, we're going to hit that sweet spot. We will not be designing towards the turkey bowl. We'll be designing towards football and below, and then any difference thereof will be handled by portalets.
Yeah,
at that
perfect.
point.
Good.
But I think it'll be a substantial increase from what is there at present. Anything is a substantial increase, but it'll be a substantial increase from that. So I think it'll be a pleasant, experience at that point.
Okay,
And that's been vetted by the state building official. So he's comfortable with that scenario as far as building towards that amount versus building towards the ultimate capacity of
Yeah.
the
Good.
facility.
Good.
So
other
he's-
questions for Tiger?
Who's doing the work on the other three conditions minus the traffic study?
So the landscape architect is working on the landscaping, obviously.
Who's that?
That's Richter and Segan.
Oh, he's doing that too. All right.
Right. So Richter and Segan is the lead on the project. So
I
as a
knew
project
that, but I
manager.
didn't know. Okay.
TLB is the architect. They're working on the roof revision for the concession stand. Richter and Segan and TLB will be working through the site logistics plan for P and Z, along with the construction manager once we bring them on board. And then SLR was the traffic consultant that we had initially. They'll be the ones to take the traffic study further and then bring that to the P and Z, and then we'll probably have to bring that back bring it to the BOE. We might have to bring it back to planning and zoning as well. But I'll check with the planner and see what their overall requirements would be at that point. I'm certain they'd want to have a presentation by the consultant at that point.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so we're
I think we're good.
clear. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, should we move on to the Playhouse?
Sure.
Want to have Ian join you?
Sure.
Thank you for coming.
So just don't use that one. Use that one. There you go. So, as was requested by the town council, we contracted with Hobbs Construction to take a look at the Playhouse itself. They've been doing an inordinate amount of work, working with our project manager, Bill, our architect, APS, Architectural Preservation Studios, the current contractors on hand for both site work and for HVAC. And I'll let Ian go from there.
Sure. I think we have a very good handle right now on the scope of work and the path that's taken us to this point. And there's no doubt that it's a tricky project and complicated, and we're at a point where I think this really started out, it was my understanding, been bring things up to code and neaten up a bunch of things, and that was going to be it. And then every time something got opened up, it was a worst case scenario, and it has grown into a full gut renovation now. So and then as that happened, the designs had to catch up, and really it's now at a good starting point, I think, is where we're at. And so we've met with all the parties that Tiger said, the builder, the HVAC group, the acoustical engineers, the AV consultants, and we're pulling together with each of those. There's more information that gets uncovered and designed into it. And I think we're pulling those numbers together, and we've gone down a few paths where we thought there were some opportunities to save some money, and we don't think that may be the way to go at the moment. So we're looking at a few different options that will bounce off of Tiger and Bill and come back. We're probably within the next 2 weeks or so of coming back with some thoughts on it, and to share where we think the best direction is to go with this. Any questions?
Is the overall cost still at 7.9 million?
We're still pulling all of that together. So there's these consultants like acoustical engineers, and so that's being priced in now, and that could fall in a couple different. The town could do that work, Cinema Labs could do that work, and I think that's one area that we should look at as a potential way to bring costs down. Is maybe the town isn't the best way to proceed with that, so we're going to try to figure out where's the dividing point of what Cinema Labs should do is decorative work, and what the town should do is real infrastructure that will stay with the building for the next 30 to 50 years.
But the overall price, you didn't really answer the question on the overall price.
I don't have the firm answer because we're still pulling some of these numbers together. We literally met with the acoustical engineer last week, and so there's work that goes with that. We met with the AV consultant, and there's wiring that goes with that. We're hoping that the HVAC would be the big spot to look at. And the HVAC is a chicken and egg scenario where it's the lead times are extraordinary. And there was a design that was done that's a very good design. And so a bunch of equipment's been ordered, And you've got to do that because it's 52-week lead time for a lot of this
Oh my
equipment. And at that point, you're really locked into the design. You could technically try to break the contract with Train, but you'd set back all of your schedules at that point. And there may not be any savings that could be found by re-engineering it. So unfortunately, I don't think there's a route where there's significant savings with HVAC, which is a big portion of this project.
So you said that there's a lead time. So where are we on that lead time? Has the equipment been ordered?
Yes, so.
And what's the delivery date?
So some of it's actually already been delivered,
Okay.
and then the longest term, I think it's extended out into sort of late fall or somewhere like that. It should be delivered, I think, so there was a need that we get it ordered. There's no doubt about that.
So it sounds because of the HVAC situation, we're locked into the present design
Right,
in the $7.9 million range,
right,
whether we like it or not.
right. That's, we would love to have been able to look at some other options. I don't know that it would have resulted in anything that would have been meaningful savings. And everyone in the building industry is experiencing, you've got to get your HVAC, the electrical panels that Tiger was just talking about. I mean, they say it's a year out and you're lucky if you get them in a year. So there's a few things that need to get ordered.
Yeah, no, I understand the lead time issue, but it's just that because now it's ordered and coming, and as you said, that drives the overall structure of the project. We're kind of with it. I mean, we own it.
Right. And we asked the HVAC company, Eastern, if they could go back and talk to Train about, we'd still probably be buying Train equipment, but they had to bond the purchase, and it doesn't seem like there's a way to easily cancel that unless you wanted to.
And it's customized equipment.
Yes, I mean, maybe there'd be some luck and we could use it at another project, but
Probably not. But, yeah.
I don't think it's a good way to approach it.
When you say you've come back in 2 weeks, to come back to who?
Well, I think we'll get together with Tiger and bounce this. I think the best right now that we're seeing of opportunity to save costs is dividing up the work between the town and Cinema Labs. And I think we want to very much weigh in with Bill and Tiger on that. And then I think, do we come back here?
Come
and
back
to
here in the
town
council. Yeah. We'll come back to both once he's done with his analysis and he has ideas as to path forward, then he'll come back to both to this body and to the council.
Okay, as an update.
As an update and yeah, it's to tell them exactly where we are and give what our path forward would be. And then at that point in time, we're hoping that we, be allowed to say, okay, the council put basically a hold until we did this analysis on spending any of the $4 million that was approved. So we can't go forward without that, okay, they couldn't put a condition on the approval, right? Because it's not but it was I gave my word, so I'm not going to go forward until
Yeah,
they
good.
say it's okay.
Okay.
So, because they couldn't put a condition on the authorization. So that was just basically, a discussion. So we'll bring, when Ian's done with his analysis, we'll come forward with, the analysis and say, okay, this is what he determined, this is what he figured out. This is our best path forward. This is what we think our best path forward is. Come to you for that update, and then we'll go to the council for that update. And hopefully at that point in time, it'll satisfy the council and they'll say, okay, proceed.
Okay.
That has to happen. In my opinion, that has to happen.
Okay.
I have to get
Okay. Oh, yeah.
that. I have to get
Yeah.
the council to say proceed before we proceed.
Well, the reason, just logistically, if, we don't want to be the people holding the thing up. We don't meet again for a month. So 2 weeks is really 4 weeks unless we have to have a special meeting to come with us, or maybe you go to them first. I don't know when their meeting
Their
is. but-
meeting is tomorrow. So
So it's not
I
gonna be
think
ready
we're
either.
running the
So,
same
yeah.
problem.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So, but we'll take a look at that. I mean,
Okay.
there's holidays in the middle there too, which make it a little bit more
Mhm.
difficult to
Mhm.
try to meet. So,
Okay.
with everyone's schedule. But
Okay. Well, we'll
Yeah,
figure that
What
part of it
is
out.
Cinema Labs looking to do? What role are they playing? And you said the decorative items. What does that mean?
I think that you could, I think that the town likely, it might make sense to take it to what we call a white box, just take it to sheet rock, and then they would take from there. They would do any acoustical panels that are applied to the wall. They
Well,
would do
that
the
makes
flooring.
sense, yeah.
They'd,
They do the fit out.
yes.
Basically, they would do the fit out. We would take care of that. The original thought was that they would be adding their money into one large, into basically the entire budget and then go forward from there. And we would have one GC manage it all the way through. The other avenue is that the town just gives us, as Ethan said, we basically give them the shell. And then they fit out the inside. We take care of what the landlord would typically take care of. And then let Cinema Lab fill it with how, the fittings and furnishings that they want, how they want to see it fitted out. And there would probably, given the municipal structure and the way bidding is required for municipality versus a private entity, there's savings to be had in that regard. It's just a question of, saying, okay, we'll hand over our building to you. And, we necessarily don't always do that,
No, we
you know.
haven't done
But,
that.
right, but in this case, if there's a substantial savings to be had, we should, take.
Consider
that
it.
substantial
Oh,
savings.
absolutely,
We should at
yeah.
least, we should at least understand it.
Right,
That's totally
that's
fair.
really.
We're not looking to spend any more money from the town side. There's no anticipation of additional.
My
Um,
direction to them all along has been, we got an allotment of money, we're done. We have to figure it out, so we have to figure out where we're at.
I'm just clarifying that, that's all.
That's been the direction.
Yeah, it's been our
difficult, but
direction,
that's been the
yeah.
direction.
Anything else to share now, or you're good for a couple of weeks? You get a little more data?
Yeah, I think there's a lot coming into us as
Okay.
we speak, so we'll.
And maybe if to keep things rolling, let's just you and I stay close. Maybe we do a conference call, or, looking at Tucker, we could do something quick. If you want to give an update or there was some reason to do that. Otherwise, we could probably have to wait till the July meeting. Okay.
That's fine.
All right. Well, thank you both.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate all the hard work too. Okay, next topic is the ISF. So all of you should have received a 3-page memo that I wrote with a recommendation at the end. And let me give you the recommendation, I'll do the recommendation. I'll give you the some feedback from the superintendent and then open it up for discussion. How's that? That work for everybody? Okay, recommendation number 1 was to keep both the Board of Ed ISF and the Town of New Canaan ISF open. As you recall, the town has one for its health benefits, the Board of Ed has one for theirs. This is a proprietary fund, really built and we have it really because we're self-insured, and it made sense to have we'll call it a shock absorber for smoothing out any expenses. So keep both of them open, but combine them into one fund. This was a very good idea from Ann, but with 2 separate departments for accounting purposes. So Ann can answer all the questions related to that. Most importantly, just making sure that they have access to all the flow of information and costs and expenses and so forth. So the point was to make sure we had 2 departments, makes it easier that way. As we all know, we've been asked by the auditors and the audit committee to have fewer funds. So doing this actually helps take that into account. Number 1. Number 2, maintain the Board of Ed portion of the quarter. There was, as you remember from the prior meetings, there was a sense that they had money in the fund. I'll call it their share of the quarter. And there was some concern that our initial discussions were implying that we were taking those funds. We were never doing that. So we got that cleared up. You remember when the superintendent was here. So no change to their $1.2 million-ish, $1.2 million of their balance. That'll continue as before. Now on the town portion of the Board of Ed ISF quarter, the proposal is to reduce that to 0 from about 1.7, 1.8, 1.7, which 1.8, 1.74. The thinking there being it is not a great use of taxpayer money to sit in a fund assigned when we have an unassigned general fund of $20-ish million plus or minus. And so we believe there was no really a need for that amount of money to be sitting there, and not a good use of the taxpayer money. Same thing on the number 4 town ISF, to reduce that to $600,000 versus the current balance of 1.9 million. So we would take 1.3 of that and bring it out of that fund. Again, no need to have that large of a contingency. By the way, $1.9 million contingency fund on a $5 million expense, roughly, right? So just really an absurd amount of money. So the suggestion would be to take those 4 steps and then combine the funds, combine the monies that are in those 2 funds and bring them back to the town, and we can talk about how we want to deploy those. There has been comments in the past from people thinking that we do this to help us manage our mill rate. Not related, obviously, in the sense that all money coming in and out of the town is related to the mill rate. I guess that's related, but this isn't really a mill rate conversation. This is a management of funds and dollars and taxpayer dollars, and having them tied up and blocked. They're when they're assigned, they're not available. We didn't believe it was a good use of funds. The superintendent is here. If it's okay with you, I was going to summarize your points to share with the board, and then when I go off the rails or do say something that's just not accurate, you'll chime in. Do you want to come up? It probably makes sense. Okay. The superintendent and I have obviously talked about this and gone back and forth a little bit in terms of where we are. And I would, if you're, I'll summarize the message and then, yeah. So his first point, that the cost of the plan, which is all of the Cigna fees, the stop loss, the claims, and of course, all the contributions and so forth, that's all part of the annual budget and isn't really on the table for this discussion. The IBNR is, as we all know, and I said in my memo, it's an audit requirement. Typically you budget, I think, 10% for the IBNR. That's incurred but not reimbursed. And so there's always a delay in the money and the way it flows with claims. You could have a claim today that's incurred, but it won't be reimbursed obviously till July, August, maybe even as late as September. So there needs to be some money aside for that. Also part of the budget process. So not part of this conversation. Superintendent was suggesting that there continue to be a floor of some amount of money in the ISF reserve fund. And I thought actually a very good suggestion to have an annual rolling 3-year view of what we think it would take to replenish and keep a floor. Why have a floor? Well, there's a reason why we have an ISF in the first place, and it's to manage the shock absorber associated with healthcare costs. So we know that there could be a reason for that. An 8% floor, which was recommended, but could be anything else, is about what's in there today. Now, 5 years from now, I doubt $1 million or $1.2 million would represent 8% anymore. My guess is the expenses won't be $15 million. They're going to be $20 million. Who knows? And so 8%, a $1 million reserve will not necessarily provide a little of that shock absorber. So we might have to have 1 point. The point, though, was that at this time of year, every year, take a look and think about how we'd want to make sure we had a shock absorber amount of money in there. Honestly, I thought it was good input, good guidance, good governance, and I think something like that would make sense. I think then managing whatever else happens with that fund, we could talk about. We don't want to fund any more than that on the town side because that's what the unassigned general fund's for. We literally have a massive amount of money that we could use for any kind of change in healthcare. So I'll stop there. You have our recommendations. We'll want to vote on those. I gave a high level input from the superintendent, but Brian, other thoughts you might have or anything else that I missed?
Just very briefly, for what it's worth, the difference between sort of what we're talking about versus what we've done. What we've done has been essentially a spreadsheet exercise that would bring us to the penny to the numbers as we've talked about. Whereas in this model, if there were a year that we are well above the floor, we'd have conversation about what makes sense. Is it to bring it to the floor? Is it to use it over 2 years? There were some recommendations by the Board of Finance in the past where it's, if we had a $2 million savings, let's not create a cliff for ourselves the next year. Let's think out in terms of 3 years, but the way we're managing it really didn't permit that. So we're looking to do this together to be able to manage that and say, over the next, couple of years. So, and maybe you wouldn't take it down to 8% right away. If it's a 10, maybe you go 9 one year, 8 the next year, those kinds of things. The other thought or another part of it is, as the numbers go up, as the claims, anticipated claims, the IBNR obviously goes up if you're going to say there. So we would look to use money if there were some savings in the reserve to cover that cost, and hope that the plan would function pretty self-sufficiently in doing that. If we come out better than we had anticipated in one way or the other, so that we would really expect annually to come for the costs, but hope that the others over time would take care of themselves. Again, instead of zeroing it out to the penny annually, where then we're talking about looking for money for reserves and to top this off and top that out, it gives us more decision points, and I think longer term planning that we can do with the plan. So this model exists elsewhere in some spots, which is where we started researching that and thought that we've adapted a little bit for us, but
Okay.
thought it was worth considering.
So that's where we are. Those are the thoughts and recommendations. And I would just, as a suggestion, you and I could memorialize the things that we think we want to do here. And I wouldn't do it tonight, but we'd have an agreement on how we'd want to handle that going forward. I think that
Yeah, I
makes
think
good
we'll have a
sense.
few
Like
more
you said, it's good
conversations.
governance. Questions, Chris, Michael, other ISF experts?
Call us that.
Years.
So the 8%, and so instead of, if we used to have a 20% corridor and the Board of Education was responsible for 40%. So 40% of 20% is 8%. Is that
Isn't
how
that
you-
great? Isn't that amazing? We've created another dozen experts. Fantastic.
So the question is, how is this different from the current setup?
So the current setup,
Instead of calling it 20% of
Well, now, the
40%, now we're
difference
gonna
I
call
hear,
it
it-
8%.
Sure.
It's the same number.
no, it's now minimum. It's
Yeah.
not 8% always. It's a minimum. It could be 10%, it could be 12%. It's a minimum of 8%, not 8%. That's the
Mhm.
difference.
Right, but at the end of the day, the Board of Education would still hold part of the town's general funds on its books.
I think so, right? Is that?
And isn't that ultimately what this whole discussion is always about?
Well,
Yeah.
hopefully that.
Yes, it is,
So I guess the fundamental
it holds
question is, are we
20%
okay-
today.
Are
And
we
this,
okay as a town to say that, all right, the Board of Ed will be allowed to hold a portion of the town's general fund balance on its books? As a cushion, as a shock absorber, call it whatever you will.
Mhm.
Philosophically, are we okay with that?
Well,
Because
there's
that's
two
basic,
questions.
and then you can define any way you want. You could devise 8% as the corridor, whatever it was, but that's the basic question.
I think the way it's intended to act is as a self-insured entity, there's financial prudence to having a contingency fund for an unexpected, event. That's what literally what it's for. If you weren't self-funded, it wouldn't necessarily even be a conversation, but because we're self-funded, or self-insured, excuse me, we have something there.
Right.
That being there of 8% of the total expense, as you say, it's assigned to that entity. If they were to if we limited that to 0, every year you could be here with a special appropriation for health expense.
What's the town's minimum on our self-insured?
Well, good question. What we're proposing is, again, on roughly $5 million, we had $600,000.
Which is what percent?
It's also 10% would be $500,000. So it's, 12%. So you could argue it's a little high by $100,000, but it's much smaller set of numbers.
But I don't see that on the sign, the 600,000.
No, I didn't either.
Is the 600,000 a sign? I see the,
Yeah,
oh, is it in a totally different fund, the
but
600,000?
where is that?
Because I don't see it on that sheet you have.
Yeah, we went over this. Oh,
Again, you could argue that could come down. And again, it's a proposal. We can decide whatever we want to do. You could make that 0. But again, occasionally we're not that good on health expenses every year. There's got to be a little bit of a corridor. We're self-insured. This provides a little bit of a, a management tool for dealing with,
Exactly. So the argument would be that somewhere in the system, there should be a reserve fund for miscalculations on the
Health
on the
expense.
health expense.
that's this.
Okay.
That's all this is.
Not miscalculations. I mean.
Well,
I'm-
just
I'm-
a-
you're-
unexpected variability.
You're making projections, and obviously self-insurance has variability, so
yeah, so
it's a shock
because of
absorber.
variability.
it's a shock absorber.
Yeah, it's a short, but where should that reside? I mean, you have the source of funds, the only source of funds is the town,
Yes.
because the town is the only.
Well,
tax- is the
No,
only
that's
tax-
not true because all the employees, and administration on the Board of Ed side and town employees do pay, contributions to their health
All right, and
expenses.
where does that money go?
Well, washes through the system. Yeah.
Right. And if we come out ahead in a year, then part of that is the money that they've contributed. and we come
That's
out
part,
ahead.
you could argue that is part of
So that's what helps to build the reserves.
their share of their annual health expenses
That would make-
washes
that
through
would
this fund.
Make sense.
expenses.
It would make sense if those premiums were paid into a fund on the books of the Board of Education, because in fact, that's where they come from.
They are paid, that's what, they go into the ISF.
Okay.
And they go
So-
through their health.
So.
Remember, we have two different providers.
So this floor
Chris.
concept,
So so your Cigna,
We're saying, correct.
Cigna,
yeah, but I'm just talking about if the idea is to have a reserve fund on the Board of Education's books, and they have a source of funds, then why can't those source of funds fund that reserve on their books?
well,
As opposed to it being an allocation from the town's general funds.
I think it could, and I think it should in another year or two if
So,
everybody's comfortable. I
The
think
floor
that's where
concept
you're going.
itself
Yeah,
is so that, in those years where we come out ahead, right, we know what's available, what sort of corridor we have to whether it gets turned back to general fund, whatever, over a period of time. Whether if it's a small amount, maybe it's all at once. If it's like what we've been experiencing the last couple of years with the variability, which maybe we take a longer view, but we know where that floor is, so we're not going below that point for that consistency and in truth. So the Board of Education has some of that risk management built in as
But
well.
Brian, an argument could be made that the premiums paid to the by Board of Ed employees to Board of Ed Health Fund should never be sent back to the town,
They never are.
no,
Okay.
they haven't.
They
done it.
never are.
No,
because you're
They can't be.
talking about if the money goes into this to this
sure, so-
floor, and there's more or less, then you have this balance back and forth. That doesn't make a whole bunch of sense.
yeah,
There's ways to work that, such as buying down the premium with excess, with things that in the money that's above that 8%. Right? So that's part of the conversation I think that we have yet to have. But between the IBNR at 10%, which is that audit requirement, and the reason we picked 8% as the floor was that essentially in a catastrophic year, we have coverage that almost gets us fully to the 120% aggregate stop loss, which we don't anticipate, but we still have that coverage if need be, right? And then we'd have to talk about how do we replenish that IBNR for the audit and things like that.
look, this is a recommendation for now. We can have this conversation, and if you want to we want to make a tweak a year from now, we've learned something, or we want to see, what, we still doesn't make sense. We can continue the discussion. We're keeping both accounts open. They're gonna go to one fund, but it doesn't matter. They're gonna be in the two departments with visibility.
What we've done is we've redefined the amount of money that the town's money that the Board of Ed holds on its books, but this is still the same amount of money.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's $1 million too.
It's 3 million today.
yeah.
Now
it's
it will become $1 million too.
But not all of it is on their side.
No, it's of course not. Yeah.
So my point still is that
It's not, this is not the same. This recommendation is not the same. It does retain the $1 million, the $1.2 million that has been in we'll call it their quarter. But it's not like we will give them another $1 million next year unless they were to spend it all, which would be extremely unusual, right? So this million sort of sits there. And to Brian's point, it could go down, will go down some years and it'll go up other years. And that's the purpose of doing this thoughtfully over a 3-year window. We never want that to get too big or too small. And if we don't want to create a cliff and all those sorts of things, I think we just actively manage that. But at the end of the day, their employees are paying through this fund their share of their expenses too. So that's
Todd, there's another component too, that to look, like you said, a year down the road is the retirees that are in that program. Right now, the ISF and the board and the town are covering those costs. The pension fund is not. So as those claims shift over both the town and the Board of Ed side, those claims, those IBNR numbers, those numbers are going to start coming down. IBNR numbers are going to be split out so that retirees' IBNRs are going to go over to the trust. So in another year or so, if the trust continues to build the way it is, I mean, we're going to try and put 300,000 against it this year or in 24, but another year, we're talking $1 million plus in retiree benefits that will be covered 100% by the trust and not by the town or the board anymore. So that would have also an impact on what reserve you would need at that point.
So you're saying it'd be less?
It would be less because the retirees would be covered 100%
Got
through
it.
the trust.
Right,
And their IBNR would be covered.
right.
I want to make sure what you recommend.
difference.
Thanks for that. That's a very good insight. You're suggesting zero everything out. Why have any? And if we were to have so play it out, and then in May, we're $1 million, $500,000 short because we budgeted whatever the actuaries told us to, but 5 things happened and the stop loss didn't cover it. And, we had $500,000. They would have to come here for a special appropriation and to the town council to
What
cover
if
the
they go
cost.
through the 1.2?
Same thing,
What's your
Same
question?
thing.
So then they finally have to come. So at some point.
same thing.
they
But it's a
might have to
question of
come
just
down.
probabilities of
Yeah.
exceeding the 1.2 would, you're getting into really, according to the actuaries,
Look,
Tiny.
we have 10 years of operating experience, right, in this scenario. And one of the reasons why this ISF got to the point of where it was with its complexity and with reserves upon reserves is because admittedly, at that point, we only knew what to be scared of, right? Which is, well, what happens if this stuff, right? And now we have 10 years of run rates. We're kind of looking at all. And, to your point, maybe under this new proposal, we get another 3 years, on top of it, and we'll know. But, I don't think it's unfair to suggest that the circumstances under which we blow through the $1.2 million, I think we can now fairly say, given experience, are pretty remote.
pretty remote. We just
Yeah,
had a pandemic.
Not zero. no.
Had a pandemic, didn't do it.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
keep in mind the
So what we're
bias,
trying to do here-
the bias, if you were in charge of forecasting health expenses and there was no internal services fund for, the 2% contingency risk, what are you going to do? You're going to say it's 15 million or you say it's 16 million? Now you might not spend it, so therefore it's unspent. I get it. But you see it starts to have a domino effect
Yeah,
of,
So what this accomplishes for us is that we give ourselves a few extra chances of not having to vote a special appropriation.
well, two things.
That's what we're avoiding.
For this frees up $1.9 million for,
Understand on our
okay,
side,
that
it
part of
makes
it, you're good
sense.
on that.
Yeah.
So the question on the town, on the Board of Ed side, I would say that's correct, that it takes, it keeps a little bit of an easy fund to the extent that there's something that goes awry, and we all monitor it and watch it, and we don't want it to grow to 2 or 3 or 4 million, wouldn't necessarily need to do that.
But we would
But yes.
never not vote a special appropriation for healthcare.
It's also just from a practical governance point of view, why inflict that on yourselves? It adds a lot of stress in the system, I think. Let me make a suggestion. I hear what you're saying. I'm not discounting it. We can do what we want to do a year from now, 2 years. We could say, you know what, we're still let's one step at a time and learn what we've learned. But
Yeah, I'm okay with that, Chris, because of what Todd said, 1 step at a time, we're getting 1.8 back. The 1.2 gives a little buffer. We don't have to come back to appropriations for special appropriation. I think it makes sense. I think your proposal makes sense. The whole floor of 8%, I think I want to think about it more because that's a new thing that was proposed today. Based on what you're saying, and the floor might not be 8%, it could be 6%, it could be 10%. But to impose a floor of 8% today for the next 3 years, I think I just heard it today. I would want to think
Sure.
about the pluses and minuses.
I like the idea of a discussion around it. The recommendation
Yeah.
being 8%, that's kind of the placeholder for right now, but the thought
Or
being there's
even
got
the
to be.
1.2, we're not even saying the 8%.
That's for this year. That's
Right.
done. I mean, the question would be this year, though, think about what the proposal is really actually
But
for
I
next
I
year.
think we just heard it like 10 minutes ago.
No, no.
I don't want to make a decision.
I think you're okay with that.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean,
Where did the 8%?
In the-
come
This is a suggestion from the
So-
It just
superintendent.
came proposed.
Yeah.
well, and it did, I mean,
Oh.
it was in conversation conversation with Joe Spurgeon,
Yeah.
our consultant, and it is also the 40% of the 20%, what's in the budget today.
Right.
Right. So if we can outperform our projections a little bit going throughout next year, which, who knows what happens, but if we do, then, there's the money that's available to
Right.
move that up and have
Right.
that conversation.
Right, it might not be 8%, it could be higher because you need more, or it could be lower because the surplus is funded too, right? So
Sure.
you need less reserve, so.
Yep.
You
Yep.
just want to.
And if we were to dip below the floor, that we would also look to put a plan in place to replenish. That wouldn't necessarily be asked
Guys,
for in
hang
the
on,
budget.
Chris, hang on.
Right? Because again, the plan is to allow the fund to function as it's meant to function. And so there'll be movement up and down. But if it goes from 8 to 5%, we wouldn't be coming to the Board of Finance right away, say,
You're
we
coming
need to
next
go right
year.
back to the
Right,
8%.
it'd be next
The
year.
board we'd meet and talk and say, hey, over the next couple of years, are there some things we can do to try to get this back up to the 8%? So without having to come for the funding directly and allow the plan to do that. And then if over a couple of years it doesn't, then we may have to look at and appropriate something else in the budget cycle.
Right.
But
I just-
again, it gives us
I
that
hear what you're
flexibility
saying, I
versus
understand that. Yeah, the question is 8% the right number for a floor? I don't know, I just want to
Sure.
understand it, that's all.
Yeah, and that's,
That's
again,
fair.
we can talk
That's
to
fair.
Joe, we can talk to Larry, we can talk to anybody and get.
We're
some
not
feedback.
voting on that 8% right now.
Okay, all right, I wasn't sure. 'cause
Okay, I
you
think,
had a
what-
proposal that. we
although
think-
the 1.2 million happens to be 8%, so that is getting voted on in that regard.
Right, the
But it's not-
1.2, not the floor, not
That's right.
calling the
Thank
floor.
God it's
calling it-
That's right.
The 1.2 is not the floor, the 1.2 is what we're holding
Signed
it this
from
year.
For this year,
Correct,
or for
correct,
next
yeah.
year. And then I think we just agreed, we'll have this conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good idea.
That sounds good.
Other input?
I mean, as a practical matter, the money comes out, right? The insurance company's linked to the account anyway. I mean, that it's a bit of semantics to begin. I mean, it's not like they're going to run out of money because I think I heard in the last meeting about this, that, they're linked to our account. So even if that balance went away, it's going to dig
We're
into
good.
some other
Right.
We're-
town funds and
Right.
we'll, after the fact, have to approve it, which the town.
How does that
stands
work?
behind
So I have it as ZBA. So no matter what happens to the fund, it'll
it's-
always be
it.
funded.
Yeah, it's coming
If
in.
you
We're,
dip below on a budgetary basis, it'll always get
The
funded.
fund
hope
is.
nobody steals it.
Oh, that's important. That's because it's the fund and it's not their, but that's not a, hang on, say that. I want to make sure I understand that.
ISF fund, I set it up at the bank account as a ZBA. So the bank comes in and pulls it and we fund it every night. So I keep zero balance in that account at all times.
So there's never going to be a time when we're not going to.
So what happens
Okay.
when their budget is 15 million, they spend it? The reserve in the fund is $1 million and it gets spent.
It'll get.
How do they
spent.
how do they grab a dollar? Where did
They're
that come
still gonna
from?
grab the dollar. They're just gonna start going into a negative on a P and L
They're gonna
basis.
That's
Okay.
what It's just semantics, where's
Yeah.
help,
Right.
because it's coming
Yeah,
out of
we're,
a fund.
we're
anyway.
good for this. In
Such
fact,
a-
we're,
such an
Just
important.
say-
we're set up so that we.
Point, this
Yeah.
is
Right,
a
so
reserve.
that-
I mean, we are on the
Such an
hook.
important
and
It's also reserved without. a
We're gonna
purpose.
fund it.
That's just where the rubber
Well,
meets the
it's a
road. It just
good
shows you
reserve.
how on the.
Right.
hook-
All right,
It's
go
a
ahead.
perception thing.
But go ahead.
Yeah, it's
I
perception.
think it's also, it's a planning and it's a management.
Yeah,
approach, right? We
I don't
need
mean to
to,
take back.
we have to define and
Because
put
we're gonna
bounds
be there.
around and understand and be able to track and be able to manage. And, I know for instance, there's an impress account. There are,
Well, the
it's a little
key-
more complex, I
Right.
think,
Yeah.
and it's worth understanding.
I think also, we just want to make sure there's no risk, right? And you're saying there's no risk of it not being funded, right? So that is a peace of
So
mind that we're
that's,
not,
Right.
which is important, that it's not.
Operationally.
Always
it
be.
will not
They're
matter.
always, so we don't have to have a special appropriation like tomorrow, because, oh, you're down to like $1 and we
No, it
got
only affects your P and L.
No, it's over
So
now,
the health,
right?
health expenses are. all
Again, I think
connected.
it's worth you
Right.
just
And they have
understanding
an
that
interest fund, Yeah.
Okay. We'd
a
love
little
to.
deeper. Yep.
How do the other
It's a bigger
towns
conversation.
fund?
Yeah.
How did the other towns? They don't have these reserves. They don't
Well,
have
some of
these.
them, no,
If,
you have
if
a-
you're
if
if you're self-insured,
Yeah,
you would have an
Have
ISF.
an ISF, if you're.
automatically.
Yeah, because of the risk
Alright.
to your general fund is too much.
Yeah.
But
All
on
right.
whose books?
On both books, because the Board of Ed
Right.
can't estimate an IBNR at the end of the year. They need to know what their numbers are for the year because they can't go over, sorry, I'm speaking for you. They can't
No,
go
no,
over budget. So for a self-funded, you don't know that fluctuation. You could put in 10 and you hit 16 for the year. So Board of Ed can't handle that type of we could go under, but by statute, the Board of Ed can't. So if it's a self-insured, you have to put it into some other fund so that your general
Got it.
fund isn't affected.
Okay, so what you're saying now is that the best practices of other towns that have or that are self-funded is that you have an ISF that is divided between the boards of education and the town.
They run the gamut of which ones. Most of them, per our broker said, most of them are combined, but they keep them separate in the fund.
Two
But then
account-
you
two
have
departments.
two departments in
what
one
we're doing.
fund. Then you have
Depends.
some that are different, that have separate like us. You have some that even just the town completely controls it. So different towns have different setups, but you would have you would have a definite ISF funds. for them.
Okay,
If you
so,
are rated together, according to Joe, if the town and the Board of Ed is rated together, it's more likely to be one fund. If you're rated separately like we are, it's more likely to be the way that we have it set up.
you're
Rated,
rated
yeah.
separately from the town?
Be rated
Sure.
annuities?
What do you mean?
No, in our insurance rate for the insurance. We
Oh,
have
oh, I
different
was gonna
companies
say
and our risk
bond
rating
rating.
and the
That's the
premium rating and
usual
all that,
problem is
because
that
we have
one
Anthem versus Cigna, we have different plan years
provider.
and we're not rated together in our insurance.
Together, so we would be still separate in one fund.
Correct,
Yeah, yeah.
correct.
yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so
Are-
that's, so that's the regulatory nuance on which to hang our hats on this, that because you have two different ratings, because we use two different insurance companies, we have to have,
Doesn't affect your accounting. That's what I'm having a problem with. Sorry. It
No,
doesn't-
no, no.
It doesn't affect the accounting because I was tracking two separate insurance companies within the same ISF fund.
Mhm.
And you keep them a separate department, so you know that this particular department has this fund balance and this one. So they're never commingled. They're as a fund, they're commingled, but they're kept separate.
okay.
Saying they're
that's what-
calculated separately.
They would still be calculated, separate budget, separate everything, but just in one fund.
So this
That's-
begs the question, why not everything on the town side?
That's my point.
What do you mean
Well,
on
but
the
then you
town
get into
side?
the issue of the employees
That's right.
of the school are putting money,
Just have one,
So
they're putting money in.
well, that's,
I know.
It's the
Yeah,
same.
you know, calculated the way.
But it's
Now, you say there could be crossover?
Optically,
If
I know.
if one, the
I've
town,
never experienced where a town has overseen the Board of Eds. They haven't taken it completely over. They operate it because we technically own the ISF fund. It is our fund on the town side,
Mhm.
but I've never seen it where the town completely makes all those decisions, the brokers, the everything. I haven't seen that. I've seen it where it's in one fund and two separate brokers.
Chris, could you get aligned with doing this for this step for this year? Because I think it's a lot of change in to go all the way to Bright on everything all at once feels, you know, this is why I wrote it the way that I did. I thought it was a very, very positive and productive first step. And there's still a lot of anxiety and tension in the system. And we live with this for a year. It's not like it
Yeah, well-
materially changes the financial economics of the
I
town.
understand where you're
But I
going.
hear you. I mean, there's reasons to think, well, what are the risks going, you know, one step further? I get that.
But in all fairness, we've been discussing this for 3 to 4 years.
Oh, at least.
We're making little changes each time as we get down. So,
For you.
you know, as opposed to a final resolution, it looks like we have another step forward and we'll have to take another bite of the apple at some other point.
Okay.
That's my.
It's a pretty big step.
Just a little
It's a
context on
label
the step.
change.
I hear you. Oh, wow.
But a little context on the step for what it's worth. Back when the agreement around the 60-40, who's holding what and all of those things were, the Board of Education reduced its budget by that amount.
Yeah.
Right, just right out of the budget. That savings was there. And then when we switched from 40-60 to 60-40, reduced its budget by that amount once again. Right. So now in cooperation, working together and understanding each other, we're understanding that 60% is not going to be held specifically for the reasons that have been discussed. So I do think it is a significant step because that's the step, right? Because otherwise that's funding that was in the Board of Education's budget prior to the 60-40, 40-60 agreement and what the assumptions that the budget's been built on over the last couple of years. So I
But-
do think that's significant.
Exactly, but the budget has been refined considerably. But your actuarial estimates have improved tremendously over the last few years too, which allows you to relinquish that piece without great anxiety.
You lost me.
And
This isn't in your budget.
Correct,
Okay. This isn't your operating or anything.
correct,
Okay,
correct,
okay,
correct.
Okay.
No. I'm going back to 2013,
okay.
prior to the agreement in place, it was.
I got you.
We did, that agreement came in place so that it wouldn't be.
Yep.
And then we increased and flipped and a little bit more was out.
Twisted and
And now we're
okay.
You know, so again, it is about experience and about maturation
Yeah,
and understanding and,
Yeah, I think
you
you're
know,
right.
as
I
we've
think
run the fund through
predictions
the
are
years, but
better.
Yeah, yeah.
Other discussion? I've been looking, I have a crick in my neck because I've only been looking this way.
It sounds like a very good compromise. It's an
Yeah,
incremental
it's a
change.
compromise.
It gives comfort to the Board of Ed and the employees that they're, you know, not pulling the rug out from underneath them, but we're freeing up $1.8 million, which is a substantial amount. So, you know, I congratulate you, for both of you, for working it out. I think it's, and as you said, it's for 1 year, so we look at it again
Right.
next year and we have more experience.
Mhm.
So I support it.
And it's
Any other thoughts?
taxpayer
No,
money.
I'm good.
That's worth
I
Okay,
think,
all right.
being reminded of. Yeah.
Larry,
I'm good.
did you talk to Larry?
Victor?
You talked to about, why not 6% rather than 8%?
Yeah, I'm wondering about that. Are we?
What's that?
We can talk.
I
about
I would say, given where we are in the cycle of the year, this is, what 8% are you talking about? You're talking about,
Rather than the floor being 8%.
we're not discussing the floor. The floor is not part of
That's right.
this. This is staying at 8%.
Technically it is.
Well, it is staying at 8% because that was what was in there, and I thought that that was simple.
Right.
I
I
think
mean,
we all should get together, discuss what is an appropriate floor and what is, and I don't really know. But just
and it might make sense. That's where maybe we establish the same,
Sit together
number.
and exactly.
you know, because if one's at 10 and one's at 6 or 5 or 8 or whatever, maybe. That's a good conversation to have with Larry and Joe and.
Right.
Cheryl Jones suggested that the broker had suggested $700,000 for the town, but that didn't make, we couldn't justify that. It didn't make any sense. So we took it down to
Down
the
to
600,000.
yeah.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, we can have a vote on approving these recommendations regards to the ISF.
your recommendation, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there are 4 recommendations, so which one are we?
I'd vote them all. Keep the 2 funds, but combine them into 1 fund and create 2 separate departments for accounting purposes. Maintain the Board of Ed portion of the quarter at the 1.2 million, reduce the town portion of the quarter to 0 from 1.74, and then reduce the town of New Canaan ISF fund for the town employees to 600,000 from 1.9.
I have a question on number 4.
Mhm.
Where's that 600,000?
It's in the towns, no, it's in the town
IS.
ISF fund, so we've 2 ISF funds, we just talked about the Board of Ed.
Right.
The town has its own ISF fund, which by the end of this year will approximately 1.9 million.
So it's in an assigned fund. So there's,
Not showing up. on
it's
the-
not broken out.
It's not in here.
It's one, yeah.
Oh, you're asking where's the
Yeah,
money
where
going?
is it here?
And we're
Yeah.
pulling it.
On that
It's,
sheet,
it's in our budget number right
but it's
now.
not in the assigned fund here.
Not in here. It's not, this is the general fund only for mill rate
So there's
calculation.
okay,
We
separate.
have a
fund.
separate fund by itself and the ISF. for
Is
the
there
town.
any other thing that's not on here other than the ISF fund of 1.9 million? Is there
Do
any
we have other
secret
assigned
fund?
funds? I think we
Assigned
do.
funds?
We
He's looking for
probably
some
have
money.
30, 40 funds.
That's, this is where we.
We have a
go.
lot of funds.
Do it.
So the question is to look at
It's
those
too
30,
many.
40 funds. Do we need all the separate
Mhm.
30? or
Thank
40
you
funds?
for volunteering. That's fantastic. I appreciate that. You are my favorite board. Home was a minute ago, but you are now.
Come on. Go ahead.
Yes, we will absolutely. They don't add up. Pickleball.
Fund over there.
There's a pickleball fund there.
There's
There's a pickleball.
Budget set, pickleball set. You got yourself. some-
All right. Those are the 4 recommendations.
So- Okay.
Like a motion, you wouldn't,
I'll move.
Well, let's
Nobody-
make a motion second, and then we can discuss it. I have one more question. Want me to ask it now?
Yeah.
sure.
So we are, by doing this, moving away from the concept of the corridor, right?
Mhm.
So could we remove the references to corridor and the 60-40 and 60-20 out of this resolution so that it now becomes a new set of and we're now harking back to the old one.
Well, one is that. That's what one is to create 2 accounts, and that's where the money will go. I only kept the references to the quarters because it's the only way to track it in the way that the write-up was written to make sure everybody knew and could follow the
Okay, so this
The
is
logic,
for
but-
reference purposes only.
Yeah,
quarter.
Chris makes a good point, though, I think that, which is, in 2 and 3, we're still referencing the corridor and we're not really embedding Brian's response about, well, it's a floor. the number coincidentally happens to be the same, right? And then, there was also the 3-year look back and trying to manage and all that. That's not really here. This is.
Well,
kind
it
of-
could just be maintain the Board of Ed fund balance, current fund balance. And then reduce the town's current fund balance. It doesn't have to reference the quarter at all. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, that would
makes
be good.
sense.
Yeah.
okay,
That makes
okay.
sense.
So we'll strike the quarter from this
And the percentages.
and the percentages, because they've been referenced up top. The story's been told. That's fair. Gotcha.
And that also repeats in 3.
Yes, I got it both. Okay. Okay, so a motion to approve those 4 with the suggested edits that Chris just made. Michael, second? Tom?
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? None? So moved.
good.
Thank you, Brian, too. Very helpful. And we owe follow-up discussions on how to go forward. All the other things we just talked about. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and you're gonna hang around.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
Okay. All right.
He loves us.
All right. Josh, try to follow that.
Cherry Street.
All right. He's going to Cherry Street. Exactly.
1.2.
I'll see you there.
So this is an important update on how we're wrapping up. And we'll have, I think we want to do your line item transfers and so you two have the next couple items.
Yeah. They kind
Yeah.
of merge.
Yeah.
Of hours.
One of the reasons, as you recall, we wanted to hold off on the mill rate was to get the latest and greatest in
Sure.
terms of how things were
Which we
looking,
have.
which
Could
you
make a
have.
difference,
So
yeah.
let's go through it. Yep.
All right, so. So I printed out copies for everyone.
Thank you.
Yep, good.
Oh,
There.
yeah.
So in front of you, you have the year-to-date financials as of May 31st, 2023. And I'll kind of quickly go through this since it sort of melds into the talk of
Mhm.
where we think the fund balance will end up, and therefore the mill rate setting. So starting at the overall revenue side, it's at 101.55%. Which is 2.4 million over what was budgeted. So if you remember from last month, we were at about 600,000 over what was budgeted. There's been a big push to get everything in from all the departments and finance.
Great.
Booking a lot of interest on investments, upticks in conveyance fees that were kind of expected, getting the BOE excess cost grant in, even though it was less than we expected, it's still a big help. So starting at the top is the tax collects at 101.3%, 1.9 million over what was budgeted, which is a 200,000 bump from last month. Building permits finally hit over 100%, so that's why at 102.8%. 25K over what was budgeted, but still about 240,000 under where we were last year. Conveyance fees are at 75% of what was budgeted. And I'd also just make a note that this is obviously as of May 31st. So when we talk about fund balances, we are obviously talking over, June 13th.
Oh,
is
is
where we're
this,
at.
this is only this isn't forecasted.
There will be.
Oh, okay.
forecasts.
show
Okay,
you the
so we could
forecast.
possibly do better than the 2.4.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Look
yeah.
at you. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's go.
So down to conveyance fees, right? We're at minus about 500,000 under what was budgeted. We had gotten about 200,000 from last month that we had booked in there. So we probably won't hit that 100% mark, but we'll get pretty close to it. Parking is edging out last year. It's slightly up about 30,000 at 88% of what was budgeted. And about 100,000 booked to go for 1 month to go, and it'll probably come close, maybe not hit the mark, but pretty close. BOE excess cost grant, like I said, came in, but it came in 300,000 what was expected. That's just what we got from the state, and not much we could really do about that. The other revenues is at 119%, and that's 1.2 million over what was budgeted. And that's largely due to interest on investments, which is currently in this at 1.25 million when we had budgeted
500,000. And that's it here for revenue.
What, a quick question, Ann, where's that new special rec department thing where they collect the revenues to get? how's that-
That's in self-sustaining. It's a different fund.
Yeah,
We've been very fortunate in trying to keep it tight where we have not used it yet, but it goes live July 1st.
so is there a big number in there now?
There's nothing in there yet. It'll start July 1st and that's where it's going to shift. Everything is going through the general fund right now through June 30th.
Okay,
We did that, give them seed money, if I want to call it that, of like 150 in case they needed to expand budget, but we're able to contain it with what they have right now.
so what's the revenue from all that? Where would that show? up?
They are under 3 or 4 different departments. They are down, Park and Recs. They revenue wise, they are going to be over in a good sense in their revenue. I'm just
Yeah,
trying
I
to find
figured
it.
it'd be way over. I'm just curious where.
So if you look at the
Mhm.
second to last page is a breakdown of the revenues and what constitutes other revenues, and
Yeah,
it's
that's what I
sorted by best performers to worst performers. And so I think other classes and programs about 10 down or so is where the bulk of that recreation is.
Where's the other class and program? Okay, I see it.
That's at
So it's 679. All right, but I see it split up elsewhere too. Paddle.
Yeah,
is,
but
yeah.
it's all in here. It's split up into different programs
Yeah.
versus where we put
All
it to
park.
self-sustaining. It's more containable and we're able to do real P and Ls on it.
Okay,
And you'll see it there.
okay.
So any other questions on revenue? And so on the expense side of things, I guess we should say that we're expecting to have a savings of about 400,000. But that kind of comes more into the talk of where we expect the fund balance to end up at the end of FY 20. So we could.
So expectations are we will end up about $400,000 under budget on the spending side. That's your forecast.
Correct.
And you think will be what on the revenue? 2.8 to the
2.8.
good on revenues. Well done. That's $3.2 million swing of
And that's just the town side. So we don't know the board, talking to Sean, he'll be able to, his numbers will be ready by August, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
Good.
Any questions on that, on the cost and, it's a good story.
You want to interrupt the fund balance with line item transfers, or should we save those till after?
You know what? Let's flip them. Let's just keep going. Do the mill rate. Let's get,
All
while
right.
this is all fresh in our minds, and we'll
Sure.
go back to number 8, okay? Well, that's assuming there's nothing in the line item transfers that matters for this, and from a expense, revenue, or budget, capital,
There's 2, we're actually gonna ask something a little bit different on them in moving them out to a different fund.
but will impact
It won't
anything.
impact, we brought it into the factor of.
Okay,
this.
good. All right, okay. Okay,
So on the top, you'll see where we ended up our year-end fund balance. Broke it down between the assigned of 8.8 million, unassigned of 19.9. That was our 2022 balance. So what we did was bring it forward to the estimated 23. So we use the subsequent year's budget at that 4 million because that's right now what we've been using for our 24 budget. So we just kept that number in there. So what that does is on the unassigned portion, it takes our original 19.9 unassigned that we knew we had. We are taking from the assigned to the unassigned, the 60% corridor that the town was holding for the Board of Ed.
that's
the
the
unassigned.
1744.
Right. The estimated additional revenues of 2.8. The savings from the P and L of 400,000 to come up to a newest unassigned of 24.9. What that does then to the assigned, which is slightly above, most of the other items stay the same. We'll get the BOE encumbrances when they close out their books. And we use the 4 million in an estimated fiscal year 24 drawdown. So we went from having an unassigned of 19.9 to an estimated 24.9.
Andrew Brooks, gonna be making money on that money.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did, well, what we also did in doing the ZBAs, that gave us the potential to take another $12 million worth, that was in all different other funds, and invest it. Only town funds. They weren't, we can't take capital or anything like that, but funds that were
Good.
monies that were sitting in other funds.
Okay.
So we've got more that we can invest too, and Andrew's getting good rates right now.
What is the percentage of our unassigned fund as a percentage of our expenditures we should keep? I think we did a study.
So right now, if the way this
No,
looks
What
right,
is it? What
oh,
do we spot?
Well, I think the recommendation has been the minimum is 10%.
right,
10%.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it were 8%, I don't think anybody would care. But
right.
we'd like to, as good discipline, we really want to stay above 10%.
Right.
We sort of penciled in 12 to 13 like that, kind of, this now we're up to 15. So fine.
Yeah.
GFOA says it's 16, but you're taking in every municipality in the country. So, you know, you've got to gauge the municipality and how how Moody's is going to view a town of New Canaan's standard versus a different.
What's
town.
16?
The
GFOA guidance.
Is 16%?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But for our town, recommended 10 minimum.
10. I've seen a lot that have 10 and still are.
Amy
AAA
has said
rating.
that and others, Neil, when he was here, and others have said that's kind of the bond rating.
So about 15.6 million is what we would recommend as a minimum.
Yes,
For unassigned or total?
Unassigned.
unassigned,
Unassigned.
unassigned. If it's assigned, it doesn't count. It's not part of the calculation. So keep going. What's the 1.7?
So the 1.7 is a calculation of everything that changed, taking the 5.5 million that we were using in 23, that comes out of the assigned. That's what we had last year to balance the budget for 23. Take the 5.5 out, add back in the 2.8 and the 400,
3.2, yep.
and then take out the 4. So it's a net of all that activity.
And that's not in the balance, or that is in the balance.
Yeah, it's in the assigned balance. So the net of that activity is the 1.7.
Okay. But for us, for the purposes of this conversation, what is the, I'm sorry, what's the assumption in the 24.9? What is the assumption for what we will use for this year? Coming? Four. So if we use 0, you're telling me it would be 28.9?
Yes.
Okay.
Which would be up from 19.9.
From the assigned. I mean, the balance would obviously stay the same at 30.5, but it would just
Right.
That's
go
right.
from a
Of course,
1.6
of course,
assigned. Yeah,
Of course.
yeah,
Yes,
to make
got it.
sure.
Okay. Okay. All good news. You want to move on to? This is worth just studying for a fast second. In the middle of the page, total expenditure budget looks like it'll be up 3.12%. That's still where we are. Which is again, in this inflationary environment and everything that we will be facing and dealing with. 3.1%. But the total revenue you can see is, you know, down 11%, almost 12, 1.4 million. That's our forecast.
There was a lot of bond premium also that we used in 23 that made up some of that.
Yep, fair. Okay.
It seems excessive to me to move the unassigned fund from 19.9 up to 24.9. Why such a big increase?
Well, it is what it is. It's just the balance
The
in
savings,
the
yeah. from our
savings and
P&L.
But we
the
could-
budget
We can,
surplus. And
we can change that.
yeah, we can,
Yeah, you
we
Yeah.
can spend more to, you know,
Lower taxes.
lower taxes, but
right.
that's where we are.
Assumption.
We
All
can
that
make a
is where we are right
Our
now.
current place.
Yep.
Move it up or down.
Exactly.
So team, knowing that we've got the 24.9, so let me just make sure everybody's clear on the 1.7 and the 1.3, to call it $3 million. And all of that either is in the unassigned fund or it's been used to as part of the budget from a revenue. Okay, all of it.
All of, yeah.
All, okay, good. Okay.
We just, so the 1.3 savings on the town ISF
Yes. Transfer in.
was, you're saying that that didn't free up previously assigned, but becomes now unassigned general fund balance. You're saying that you
It's a
wash that
transfer
through.
into our
Right.
general fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
We took some of it as revenue. I don't remember which one, but
The
okay.
town side.
We
yeah.
took the town.
Town
side,
side, okay.
Because we're not touching the board.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, so the assumption here is with this budget that we would be using 4 million. That's the gray line. That's why it's highlighted in gray. It's not a recommendation. I think that was just to anchor to remind
But we've
everybody,
been to
correct?
date,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, I think an important column on the far right, reserve fund collectible. So that's the delta between 98.5 and 100. And we know that over a course of about 18 months, we always collect 100. So we will, that, whatever we are using from the fund balance, we would expect we pay ourselves back 2.2. So what you're really taking out, if these things come together, is 1.8 out of the 24.9. That's just an important thing to reminder. So if you dropped it down $1 million to go to 5 million, we would be $5 million. We would be taking about 1.7, 1.8, sorry, 2.7, 2.8 out of the balance. And that's assuming, okay, everybody's got it. Maria's a
Yeah.
CPA, double finance, Lehigh. I mean, she's already got the answer.
This doesn't account for the budget surpluses of 3.2, right? You
No,
got
included
400 in the
already.
It's all in there.
operating and-
It's in there already, Chris.
It's in there already?
Yeah, but it doesn't include what we might achieve on a surplus for next year, which shows that we probably will have more revenue. That doesn't project a surplus or a saving on expenditure for next year. But the trend has been, we've always achieved higher revenues and lower expenses. So
We budgeted $1 million or more to go into the revenue line back in February, March, anticipating we would reduce size. So that's already in here. And all they're saying is that all the delta is in the, went from assigned to unassigned. That's why the unassigned is up to almost $25 million. Oh, okay.
What I'm thinking about is, so if we assign $5 million, we're going to get back 4.2 of it,
How'd you get to 4.2?
2.8, well, no, 3.2.
We think
that
we'll
was
get,
last year.
No, that's related to last year's. This would be going forward.
Right.
So if you put,
That's all in
So
there.
Next year we'll get 3.2 back.
we get 2.2 back,
Two back.
so.
the far
okay,
right.
So fiscal year 23, at the end of June, we're estimating 3.2 back. That's coming out of the 5.5 that we budgeted last year for this current fiscal year. The 4 million, we're looking at what we're going to do for 24. And if we put 4 million, the delta between the collection rates is this number to say that's what
0.3.
you would get back.
But my projection, Chris, just to understand, is we'll get more than 2.2 back because we'll make more revenue than what we have in our budget.
Yeah, but
We might.
Spend less.
We made 2.8 this year.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, let's say we make another 2 million. next
Exactly
year.
right.
Yeah.
We made more
Yeah.
because of, looks like even conveyance and other things are
Yeah.
coming a little bit better. Interest for sure came in.
We're always a
better.
little conservative on budgeting.
Because, yeah.
Which is right.
If you think.
That's why we
about-
have these good discussions.
Right.
Instead of the bad
Exactly.
ones. Come on.
Right.
Election, the underspend, give us about $3 million a year.
Yeah. You
So,
gonna underspend again?
yeah, by 40.
That's getting hard.
On the town side.
That's getting hard.
So that always comes back into the coffers, this to replenish what we put out for to balance the tax books. But we don't even spend that amount. Right, so how much did we actually of last year's allocation? Do we know how much?
1 point, was my math correct? 1.8? Well, no, more, 2.3. 2.3 we spent down of, is that right? Of 5.5, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we had revenue hits.
Yeah.
We've been closer in the past.
Yeah.
We actually spent a little.
Can I clear something up so people aren't confused? Right now, we have 28.9 million in unassigned fund.
Yeah.
It says 24.9.
That's a good way to look at it.
That's another,
Assuming it.
That's
So if
in
we
here.
Put 0 in it, we really have 28.9, not 24.9
Yeah.
unassigned. We have a huge unassigned fund, 28.9, that's 20% almost. if we put, but, and I'm recommending now I think about it.
But
let's say-
Michael, at zero, you can talk about a 7% increase. You gotta be careful there.
We're not at
rebates.
20.9, we're at 28.9, and we have
No.
a huge unassigned fund.
Does everyone understand that
Yeah.
the whole model that shows the 24.9 already includes 4 million of it out?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's
So-
important.
If you increase
So we-
it, then you
so-
get
So
no-
we're at
yeah.
28.9.
Call
right
it
now.
25,
Mhm.
because
If we-
Josh is hiding.
Michael's getting
There's another
excited.
couple
Let him
hundred
go,
coming
let
in.
him
at
go.
the end of the
Let him
year.
go.
It's 28.9, Chris. So if
But
we use
because you
5,
take the other four, yeah.
right,
Yeah.
if we plan on using, let's say we plan on using 5, let's just use 5 now because I'm thinking 6, but but hold on. But what I'm saying is, even if we plan on using 5, what
Yeah,
your
I
point,
hope.
Chris, is we're not going to use 5. We're
That's
probably
right.
going to use 2.
Right.
Okay, instead of 5. So even if
Yeah.
we budget 5, we only use 2. At the end of next year,
That's-
we'll be at
That's
26
what
million
we've been doing
unassigned
for
fund.
years.
We're going to be in great shape. And from my
Mhm.
point of view, I think if our expenditure is increasing 3.12%, why is our mill rate increasing higher than our expenditure rate?
Yeah, well.
I
that's
think
right.
our.
Oh, because
mill
revenues
rates
came
are-
down.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We have such a huge unassigned fund. Why would
That's
we want to
right.
have a mill rate?
I'm just sharing you, that's why.
But
It's
that's
as
the
simple as that,
point,
that the revenues came down more than,
I
yeah.
get it, but
maybe-
why would we want to increase the mill rate
No.
beyond our expenditure rate if we have such a huge unassigned fund is my point.
Keep in mind,
Well-
next year's budget, you have a reval.
Reval, yeah.
That's why I
Yeah,
want a
but
lower mill
that's-
rate.
That's even more.
Yeah, but the
reason
mill
for the
rate, the reval
residents
is,
to be
it's
concerned.
academic. It doesn't make any difference. It's just the denominator on a number.
It's just a reallocation.
It doesn't make,
Right.
it doesn't, the only number that counts is the amount raised by taxation.
Yeah,
The
that's
mill
right.
rate is
That's right.
simply the
I agree with
result of a
that.
calculation. Everybody
It
focuses.
just
on that,
spreads it
but
around
it's
differently.
both.
It spreads it
Well,
around
it
differently.
Spreads it
Coming
around
down next
differently,
year.
Chris.
Yeah, so what? It doesn't change the amount.
It
of
could be
money
a
you
double
need to run
whammy.
the
Someone
town.
gets hit by 10% on a reval and another 4% on the mill
That's
rate, they're gonna be very
exactly
unhappy.
right.
Right.
And
Yeah,
they
but
will
next year they're
both,
gonna-
they
were
will
all
both.
unhappy because
in
the
a
mill
year
rates
like
went
this.
from
Crazy.
16 to 19. Now they're gonna see them go back from 19 to
18.
16 again.
Right.
And then they're
Maybe
gonna
not
say,
that
oh,
much.
this is great. And they're still paying the same amount of money.
No.
They don't, but they don't understand
It's
that at the
arithmetic.
time.
Yes.
They
The
don't.
mill rate
Talk to the
is-
realtor though. Talk to the realtor.
Yeah, okay, but.
Well, anybody that goes through a reval is gonna have the same thing happen.
How much are my dollar taxes?
That's what matters.
The dollar
Yeah.
taxes is what counts.
Real estate, that's what you gotta talk about.
So anyway, that goes. off in the-
No, that was a good one. So just to review the bidding here, if the, four-
Okay, so.
if we were to use 5 million, we believe we'll get
Okay.
2.3 of it back
Mhm.
for underestimating our tax expenses. So now you're at a $2.7 million reduction in the $25 million.
No, it's off the 28th. Remember, your unassigned
No.
fund, right, is 28.9.
No, I've already counted the 5. I've already,
You counted the four.
I counted the 4 already.
Four's
When
already
I
in
said
there. Can you take
24.9,
another-
25, that's 4's been counted.
Yeah.
Right, but you get 2.7 back. So you're back up to 27, 28.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. We're saying the same thing.
Okay.
I know you're trying to talk me down one more line here, but I'm just
Two more lines.
I'm just trying to make sure everyone
We're
follows
down to
that whatever, I guess the better way to say it to make sure everyone's, I think everybody gets it. Whatever we contribute, if you look at the column on the right, you're gonna add that back.
That's right.
Because,
right.
because we expected, we get it, and it's really a part of our reserve policy.
To the comment made earlier about the revenues being down. While that may be true, the unassigned general fund is prior year's collected taxes. So, if you use them to offset lower revenue.
That's why we do it.
Yeah.
Yes, this is literally why we do it. It's the taxpayers' money.
yeah,
I
it's
totally get it.
taxpayer money, yeah.
Totally get it. I totally get it. That's why we do it. And by the way, this was over 30. It was 31, 32, 6 or 7 years ago. So we've been giving it back to the taxpayers every year. But we manage it, everyone's been managing it well on the expense side and Riverside, and we keep adding money back. So,
On the other side, there's a lot of surprises out there.
Oh, no,
The Playhouse and.
I think we've had that
Those are
surprise.
long term.
Yeah, and.
that's probably bonded,
Got
bonded
got
capital.
bonding cliffs coming up that will absorb it.
Stunning
unfortunately. Well,
stadium.
thankfully.
Do you have any other, let me ask this a very important question.
You have a cliff. note.
Michael, you need to hear this.
Yes.
Robert.
in-
Are there
in-
other- Are there other changes, taking capital out and swapping it for debt, unused debt that we can apply to something that
It's
we're
on the
using
agenda.
taxpayers' capital for, that will put relief on our expenses? It could give everybody even a little more comfort that you could go to 5 million.
No, any of the changes we're doing now is not going.
Won't impact P and L, won't impact our revenues, won't impact our expenses.
unless I'm not understanding. Are you saying is,
What if you have unused, I'm just making
Bonding.
this up. If you had some bonding that was available and we
Some
could
project.
reduce our tax tax expense, tax paid capital expense to, and absorb some of the unused bonding, well, that could reduce our expenses.
you could, if you put it against interest, you would have to put it against interest or
Fine.
principal that we have.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, is it any, if it's de minimis, don't worry about it. But if it's $500,000 or $1 million, it could be kind of interesting.
either
I
way.
got it. I knew they did. They did.
Yes.
They did.
Everybody's.
Well, no, I only found the last million in the last couple of weeks, so.
Yeah.
She's working on it.
8:39 now, you tell them.
Chris got the-
They're gonna be putting $7 million out of this fund here. We gotta keep on, holy cow.
Wait a minute, it's another million.
Oh, no. Remember, we're on TV. All right.
Closed out a lot of
Yeah.
capital bonds. We've a lot of funds.
Okay.
So I've been trying to analyze them all and close it out. So I did one of the last ones, and the bonding one that's in front of you now is closing out 155 projects.
Right.
And in doing that, we have
Approved.
stuff that has excess funds and we have
Yeah.
ones that need to be bonded. So I was taking those excess funds to go against those authorized projects that were never bonded, because you only have a certain time period to use those
Right.
money.
That's right.
And only you have a certain time period to bond. So some of these are running up against that time period and we're not bonding till next March.
I
But
remember
really-
this from prior years, and that's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Because there's always a little something there. So,
Yeah, so after this that I have in front of you, this is going to clear up everything in all our funds. It's gonna
Okay.
close down 6 more
Great.
funds. And get these closed up that need to be funded now,
okay.
from a bonding perspective.
Great. Well, what does it provide? How does it
It doesn't
change?
reply, it doesn't give any relief directly to the general fund right now. It just means you're not bonding $2.6 million
That's right. It
now.
goes back to the
right.
bonds,
Save the
not,
bonds.
not,
interest
not.
It's just-
the
All right.
bonds,
So that's
yeah.
what it's.
Stays
Okay.
in the bonds.
So team, let's focus. We got a lot to go, and we have the superintendent got to come back.
All
So,
right, so wanna-
So
can we
why
go to-
wouldn't we
about
bring the unassigned percentage to the operating budget down to like 12%? Bring it down to 20,000. What's keeping us from?
That's
doing
what Greenwich
12%?
does. That's what Greenwich operates, 12%.
we're not exactly.
So why wouldn't we do the
Greenwich.
same?
Why would we do that? Excuse me, over what?
I'm asking why we wouldn't do that.
He's saying, well, and so what is that? Another million?
12% of the operating budget is 20 million unassigned.
Which would be, then you, since we're at 29 now, you're saying take 9 million out.
Take nine.
Yeah. But
Well,
why? Why laugh?
well, no.
What's the downside?
The problem with that
We
is that.
still have to keep our AAA rating.
And-
It's very hard to build it up.
Next year, really.
The problem with that is that.
You create a cliff for
you-
next
You
year.
give the taxpayers a false sense, because next year their taxes are gonna skyrocket.
Yeah.
by 9
Right.
You
million.
don't have any money in the tank to give them
They're
anything.
gonna get
It's a
lynched.
one-time thing.
Think about it,
Well,
Victor.
bigger with pitchforks.
You could give them nothing next year. Look what nothing is this year. It's +7. So it could be a huge jump next year. It will be. It won't even, should be. It will be.
Well, if you want to ratchet down, you got to ratchet down.
Yeah, you want to
can't-
ratchet down, Greg.
A couple million, you want to leave a little in the tank, to give it back, next year and keep it
Yeah, we
going.
took
Because then
5.5.
you'd have reserves to do
Okay.
anything.
Oh, yeah. Well,
And one of the reasons we used to
Took
keep our
500
reserves
million
for
from
many years is
500,000.
because we were concerned
You thought we were gonna take
about
Yeah. Pension.
transfers of liabilities from the state to the town.
Yeah.
Which we don't know if those have gone either.
No, but they're not here. They're not here this year.
Can I make a point though? Victor, to your point though, if, and my recommendation is 6, if you take 6 out, we're not really taking 6 out because you're getting 2.5 back. And we're gonna have more revenues than budgeted and less expense. So if we put in 6, we're probably only gonna be taking out $1.5 million to 2 million.
Well, that's 3.8
Yeah,
on just the,
Yeah.
and that's 3.8, not 6. Just using, getting the money back
Right,
from that.
3.8.
Okay. And then I don't know what other,
You
you
say
got to
what's in
remember,
there?
there are risks to revenue. You got to be careful.
We did 5.5 last year.
So let's say worst case,
See, I like that number.
let's just say worst case is 3.8.
Spend through.
3.8 off of 29 million, which is where we're at now, would get your unassigned fund down to 25.2. 25.2 is a very healthy.
Well, that's all net. That's not exactly
It's not
right.
gonna be the year end.
We-
number.
we-
Absolutely.
Well, it could be, because you don't really spend
Well, it
it.
could
You're
be.
not giving, it's not like we're assigning it. We're not really,
that's right. We're not spending.
29
Yeah.
now.
3.
If we
Yeah.
use 3.8, we're down to 25.2, which is a really healthy unassigned fund. So why wouldn't we take 6 million out
Yeah.
and get our mill rate down below our expenditure rate, which is 3.08.
You see how he's doing
I
that?
think the only
He's basically
reason
only
why-
taking the net. He's not, he's starting with the full amount and taking the net of whatever we think
That's
that
the
number
real
would be.
number is.
Josh
right?
is uncomfortable.
I
Guys,
think,
I'm very comfortable.
See?
Oh, thank you,
You're
Josh.
making me regret stopping at 6. I should have kept it going.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Listen to Jeff.
Say, well,
I
I'm
think
gonna
the only
change
reason why you
something
wouldn't want to
else.
do that is because I don't think that you can, look, people were saying here before, I don't think you want to take them down by a number and not be able to do the same thing
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
year or the
So
year
we're only
after.
taking them down about 2 to 3 million, my guess.
I
We can do 2 to 3 for a few years.
Yeah,
and go
look,
down to 10
I
to
have no
12%.
I have no beef with that. I think we should be, aggressive here and whatnot, but there is also an equity aspect, which is it has to be gradual. And this is to your point, Victor, which is this was accumulated over time by a number of
people move in and
taxpayers. So
move
to
out.
give it to the taxpayers
Yeah.
disproportionately more in one year is,
I-
it
so
seems
let-
like
let
there's
me
an
just
issue
take a-
there. But I do agree with you that, if you are thinking on the net numbers, maybe it isn't quite so aggressive
Right.
and it is the right thing to do to use these funds to the benefit of all the taxpayers, and buying down the mill rate is one of the ways that we've historically done this.
I agree. And Tom, just, last year we thought we are gonna take 5.5 out of the fund. We
Right.
only used 500,000.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, we can budget 6, we're
Yeah.
probably gonna use 2 or 3.
Right, so we shouldn't be discussing 6, we should be
So,
talking net
but
numbers.
maybe another way to think
Yeah.
about this is, could we use some of the general fund to pay for capital expenditures and then not include them in the budget?
Well, we have done that. And
Well,
the
bond-
question is how much.
So
do you
then
want?
what you're doing is you're saying, well, we're not buying down the mill rate, but what we're doing is we're using the surplus to pay for capital expenditures.
Well, now that we're making money on the money, so that's another reason to keep it, not spend it. But on the other hand, borrowing got a little more expensive too, so.
So what's our tax supported capital budget this year?
Oh,
That's another thing. We have a
That's-
big
that's
police
30
department
years
coming
ahead.
down the pike.
But that is all.
I know, but it
That's
adds to
very
the
small.
annual
No, I.
expense.
It's very
I
small,
completely
isn't it?
get
Because
that.
we use
Don't- you
premium to
can't
bring it
pay
down.
Part of that out of the.
So that won't do much for us.
No.
Can I get people, Michael brought us really, really down to, we're almost off the page with Michael's recommendation.
Not
Can-
wishing
can-
that it was lower than that.
Can we, he built the page.
That's where we should have been.
I, for one, am a little uncomfortable there, and maybe we're splitting hairs for $500,000 here and there, but I do worry that what we don't want to do is not have powder for doing this a little bit over time every year. And I mean, something with a 3 in front of it, frankly, I would walked in here today, I would be very happy to have only a 3%, which, by the way, is a cumulative 4% over 5
No, I-
years.
We've done,
Cumulative.
Last
We've
year was
done it-
1%.
Last year was 1, and the last 3 before that were 0. So
we've done a great job, but taxpayers are gonna have short memory. And they're gonna say, what are you charging me this year in the mill rate? What did your expenditure go up? Your expenditure went up 3.12%. Why is your mill rate going up 3.78?
Well, they understand revenue. We
No,
didn't
but
sell as
this-
many houses.
But
It's
they
pretty simple.
understand,
They get
they
that.
understand unassigned
No.
balances of 25 to 29 million too. It's like, this is a year that we can take down our unassigned balance from 29 million to about 25, 26 and do the taxpayer right. Like I was the one during COVID saying, we gotta save money for a rainy day because we might not know what happened. We now know that we can manage what we're going on. And I think we owe the taxpayer as much money back, and getting it down to 3.09%. I think is a
Well,
justice to the
We will
taxpayer.
let's do the math real fast. We're at 20, what do we say? We're at 20,
29.
20, call it 29. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, we would take probably a net at 6 million,
Right.
right? We would take 3.8 million out.
Yeah.
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 Probably kind of worst case,
Right.
right? Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so 25, what did I say, 3.8,
5.2.
25.2.
Mhm.
Healthy.
Yeah, it's still healthy. It's
I
very
agree.
healthy.
I agree, Michael. I think we
I mean,
should.
there are years you would have given your eye teeth for that, but we also can frame this. We could explain to the taxpayer all the things we've done this year, what went right, all of the assigned and unassigned, the projects. If you want to get into that level of detail, you can explain that when when you do your PR on this.
I do want to confirm one last time, the 24.9 does already includes assigning 4 million.
Yeah.
Mhm,
So we're
yeah.
only talking about another 2.
20.9.
That's
Yes.
That's
Because it was
pulling out
never
4 million.
included in the ending balance.
I just need to confirm.
Yeah, I know that-
Being
and
a,
people
being a
think
steward of the dollars, we gotta be, rock
It's
solid.
it's the
certain.
opening from 22 that's unassigned.
Well, I
so-
hear enthusiasm for 6. I guess the question is, do you want to have a you want to have a motion to approve using $6 million from the fund, likely a net of 3.837,
Mhm.
and have a mill rate of 3.09. That's what that,
I'll do that.
that's what
motion.
increase,
I'll
3
second that.
3.90 increase, 18.94 mill rate,
Yeah.
correct? Just got to get that right, because we got to get that right, Tucker.
That's the only one that has an 18 in front of it.
It's the only one.
Yeah, it looks good to it.
All right, team,
I like that.
too much?
Yeah, I'm not gonna vote for it.
Okay.
Who's
Five and a half.
Chris is against it.
Chris,
It's
you're
okay. It
against
doesn't have to
it?
be,
All right.
I mean, I'd like to have you on board, but
6, I think 6 is a headline number. I'm very uncomfortable with it.
We did 5.5 last year.
Yeah.
And we've
Five and a half.
come out. we've
That
kinda-
was it. That was in a
come out
much
a lot.
more
We added-
questionable
we added
year.
$5 million. It doesn't, yeah, it's true.
Well, I mean, I guess if we did 5.5 last year and we effectively, it only cost us $500,000
Right.
bucks. Maybe we really didn't do all we could have.
Right.
Well,
We
that-
don't know what
that's
that number is
legitimate
always going to
too.
be, but we know directionally with
Yeah.
some measure of confidence what it's going to be.
Right.
yeah,
That's what I'm
but
saying. 6 could be only 2 or 3, maybe worst case, like Todd said, 3.8.
Just
But I
wouldn't
think it's
wanna,
gonna be more like
there
2.
there is an aspect of managing expectations here too.
Yep.
And that's, I think your point, Chris, right?
Yeah,
but we did that last year, not knowing all.
We
the
did 5.5.
COVID.
Fletch.
Yeah, but
But
I
we're
mean.
debating-
but
we're
we
debating-
didn't
no,
have
but this
all the-
year, you think you know, but
Well, as we all know, the revenues, again, we're gonna make money on our money, so we know that's pretty locked. The taxes are and that's the bulk of the money. I mean, the rest of it's, you
And
know,
the funds have all been, I mean, this is all good news, what you did this year.
you're worried about
Could be a recession.
expenses or you're worried about revenue?
I'm a little, I'm worried about revenue. And,
Collections or what?
I mean, the only one that the biggest variables are in no particular order, building permits, who knows? It's pretty conservative. I think we have a reasonably good amount. Conveyance fees, we put 2 million again?
No, we put 1.5.
We put 1.5 for conveyance fees.
Conservative.
That's below this year.
Yeah.
that market
Yeah,
is
that's
beginning.
But it's not, I'm just saying, that's in here.
But that market's still physical.
It was a pretty conservative number, is all I'm saying.
Conservative in the budget. No,
2 million is
Tipping
not a
fees,
concern.
parking, it was, it's
Bring it
1.5
Yeah.
in our budget.
I do so.
And Board of Ed excess grant,
So I can't vote.
I don't know.
We didn't get-
Superintendent could tell us. It's,
The excess, we didn't get 300,000 of it.
we got 790,000. Are we gonna get less?
it's what?
It has to do with us bringing students back to workout place, so the base is smaller than.
Okay.
It's actually a good story.
Oh, was that,
Um,
that's good news.
Yeah.
That
Don't
is
you
good news.
think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's good news.
so that could be higher next year or would be about the same.
We're working on a couple of other students who think may come back in the district. So, I think it's pretty safe to budget about the same.
The same, and that's, which, is that, what did we do?
That's what we did.
We budgeted the same.
Yeah.
All right.
And we
Well-
did, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
worried about things that show up that are, you know,
Mhm.
like unexpected expenses at the Playhouse.
We got some
Well,
things in
oh,
flight that
we
are a little,
already
will still
have
have
that.
hair on them. It's
You know,
fair.
at the end of the day,
Are we gonna bond it?
everybody
then?
says, oh yeah, well, they're gonna walk
The
the
bond
canvas deal unless we put in another million. And so, you know, we're completely.
But I
pregnant if we
just
have to
asked
show-
that question
Yeah, well, you
tonight,
know, it's gonna
Yeah.
come back. I mean, We all know these
But
things.
but
It's
let-
not, there's, so
but I asked that.
you don't know how much.
But
you're
let's say
gonna
you're
have
right, Chris. It could have, we have $26 million in the way our budget, even as no million, we're at 25 million. We're not at 15 or 16 million unassigned fund. We have a huge cushion, in my point. I'm with you, I'm conservative, but we have such a huge
You
cushion. We
usually are,
should
yeah.
give it back to the taxpayers, right? We owe it to give it back to the taxpayers and
Well,
not increase the mill rate.
If
so
you
much.
did the same as last year at 5.5 million, that's giving them a
But
lot
we
back.
didn't really use 5.5, we used 500,000. We
Yeah.
said we're using 5.5. And when we say 6 million budget, we're probably gonna use 2 million. We're not giving 6 million back.
Yeah,
So I'm just saying
it's
it's,
conservative.
it's,
Okay, well, let's, got it. I think we've all said the same things.
Yeah.
The recommendation on the table of 6, people don't have to support it if they don't want to do it. A motion to approve $6 million coming from the fund.
I'll might make. the
Michael
motion.
Chen,
Motion,
do we have a
I
second? Need a second?
Yeah,
And Maria? Oh, was it, did you?
or Judy, that's fine.
Oh, I didn't realize Judy had seconded.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of making the mill rate 18.94, a 3.09 increase and $6 million contribution from the general fund balance. All in favor? Say aye. I gotta count these.
Seated, so I can't-
Oh, go for it. All opposed?
Nay.
All right.
Chris, any abstentions?
I'm a nay.
So 2 noes.
Mhm.
Tom and Chris were no. So the motion passes. Appreciate the input. I mean, it's, you know, I think we're debating $500,000 or $1 million at the end of the day, but I do appreciate the conservative caution on your point of view for sure. Okay. Thank you for all that. That's important work. Okay, line item transfers, Josh. Let's fly through those. How much time do you need?
5 minutes, 10 minutes when I do my thing,
Well,
the bonding.
Well, go ahead, Josh. Josh, then you, I just wonder, I'm just trying to plan for Brian.
All right, so in front of you, you have, these are just to review. There are several of them, obviously coming towards year end. People are kind of moving money around. And it gets us to $72,632.29. And that's just to review.
Okay.
And then aside from that, there are 4 transfers to approve. So I'm just gonna go through the kind of everyday approvals, and then maybe Ann will speak for the other 2. There is a $26,000 transfer in the transfer department from garbage hauling to bulky waste disposal, just within the department, just a large amount. In the pool fund, there's $104,080 being transferred from contingency to pool major maintenance. And do you want to speak to the other 2?
The other 2, what we're looking to do is take the residual balance in the particular, it's number 4, number 1 and number 4. These are for 2 contracts that were approved, the POCD and OpenGov. And we used some contingency money for the OpenGov. We don't want to lose these funds because we will lose them June 30th. So what we'd like to do is transfer them into the operating transfer and put them into a different fund so they can spend it there and not lose those funds because they're ongoing with that, the POCD and OpenGov. We used 75 contingency, the board approved it, but they only charged us 46 right now. They're not going to move the next charge until next year, next fiscal year.
Are we live? Does the system get implemented
We're
yet?
not live. It's-
November-ish.
Yeah.
Okay,
not
did we
yet.
get a good price on the software?
They did.
Okay,
As far as
good.
I remember, I think it was like 70 or so. Was it?
Yeah, I think-
that?
I think we were looking at 100 before.
I was over 100 when we talked
Yeah.
in February.
That
Because we
could be
told them to do it in
Those are
March. Good.
Very
Yeah,
good.
so we don't want to lose those funds and then retax people, do
That's
the
fine.
whole. So we want to actually move it to the special projects fund
Okay.
so that they can
Okay,
continue down the project. Otherwise, they've got to come back and ask for
Fine.
contingencies.
that works, yeah.
So it would be approving the transfer to put it into the operating transfer out
Okay.
and then approving it for me to move it to the special projects fund.
Okay, I need a motion for those 4 transfers.
I don't need to.
Any
read
questions?
them.
Yeah, any questions or discussion? Chris, do you have questions? Oh.
I thought they were questions.
Any questions or discussion?
We don't.
No. Okay, I have a motion second. Maria?
Second.
All right, all in favor of the transfers, 4 transfers as described? Thank you. All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. Done. Done.
I ask a question.
Yes, sir.
What's the amount to be raised by taxation go down to?
Yeah, I asked Josh,
Gosh,
the
what?
the amount to be raised by taxation
I think
was
it should be-
5.5, but that was with 4
The
million.
percentage.
So the
what's the
percentage is
percentage?
2 million less.
I'll have to get back to you to get you the exact percent. I
So
think
it's-
it was 5.5.
I could do it in my head if I actually had the numbers.
5.5, but it come down to 3.
Yeah, but
It goes to from 8 to 6.
it's right.
It's 50, right?
Is that right?
I think it's 3,
About the same as the mill rate increase.
probably close.
About 4.1%.
A little over 4.
Yeah, a little 4.
That makes sense.
4?
Okay,
About 4.
so while you're looking that up, let's go
4.1.
to, you have 2 bond discussions? No, I'm sorry, you have 1.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, let's do number 10, bond proceeds transfer.
So I'm closing out 155 projects officially. And from that, 37 need funding, meaning that they weren't funded at the point of time when they were authorized, because we usually do it in arrears, or we funded a portion of the project and not the full project. So the first list that you see, which is Schedule A, are all the projects that we have excess funds on. Excess funds, and it goes back to the point of what Tiger had mentioned before, that we may authorize a project up to a certain dollar amount, but we don't always spend it. If we don't need it, we don't spend it. And if we bonded for it, we give the bonds back. So the total is $2.6 million that I'm looking to take those funds and put it to Schedule B.
Which document are you on?
I'm looking at Schedule A on the agenda.
Oh, it's on the.
Sorry, on the agenda.
Okay, sorry.
You should see the back page is A and B. I have it right here if you want. I have 2 copies if you need it. Do you need it?
It's also.
What's the prior munis conversion balance?
So we had an old fund and we converted over from a different system in 2015 to Munis. The old fund, when it was brought over, had a fund balance of about $1 million in it, $1.5 million. Some of it was spent once we moved into the new Munis in 2015, but the residual just stayed in the fund balance. So it's old bonding money from 12, 13, 14 that came over as a fund balance. So in doing all this, I closed down 5 of these type of funds, 5 or 6. So I'm looking to take what's on Schedule A, the total on Schedule A on each of these projects,
2.6 million.
and assign it to the projects on Schedule B.
Okay.
No.
Did you seriously find a project that it had 18 cents to match
I couldn't believe that when I read it.
the cafeteria mill work that didn't get spent?
Yeah, literally.
You literally can't make that up.
I
Yeah,
can't,
no, you can't.
I have to close it out officially.
All right, wow, that's,
Track
when they talk to the penny, that is to the
Nonsense.
friggin'
I
penny.
can't close out the fund if I.
So you're asking us to, then we would take those unused funds to apply them to these.
On Schedule
And
B.
we won't be bonding for that amount, even though, do we have, did we approve bonding for these
These
items?
are all authorized.
So we're not
yeah.
going to be using that money.
And the money's gonna go to these authorized projects.
So
that
we
have
won't
been-
be bonding. There's
We won't be
2.6 money and you can pull out of the debt, the roadmap, I guess.
Yeah, going forward, these would have been put probably
Fine.
in March.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. Any questions for Ann on this? Good job. That's really good work. What
Great stuff.
It's a lot of work.
a really good
Yeah,
work.
it
Thank you.
is.
It's good
Yeah.
cleanup,
Oh,
though, to
that's
get
what
those
I
funds
said.
off.
It's just remarkable.
A lot of spade work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta
You
clean
get
it
'em
up.
all?
And what's it, what?
Did you get them all? or-
That's,
Oh, no, we
that's
still
really
have-
tough. That's a
Every year
brutal
we're gonna
question.
do this to keep on top of it. Because I need it for fixed assets as well, because I need to know what to capitalize, and if they're not closed, I can't capitalize them.
Gosh.
Great. Thank you.
All right, well then, any other questions? Really nice work, Ann. A motion to approve the bond transfers as described and written and submitted on schedules A and B.
Motion.
Maria, Chris, second, all in favor? Aye, opposed, none?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now, who are we inviting into executive session other than the superintendent? Is Tiger here or is he on? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to invite you all first, then move.
Do we have to close the regular
I
session?
can't hear you.
Well, I don't know. Do we do?
We have to close the regular
Yeah.
session.
I don't know what I'm looking at. Oh, but you're coming back. We have to do in a bond appropriation possibly.
Yeah, we do. It's,
We need a resolution to go in.
I know, I know. But before we close, before we do this, everyone has to sign that document before you leave.
That's
That's voting tonight. You could pass it
you
around
can
if you want.
pass.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
we always pass it.
So if I'm not. seated-
He's not seated for this, so you don't have to sign it, Bob.
Thank God.
Okay, so I'd like to, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Your inheritance.
Okay, so team, let's stay focused. Try to, we'll have to multitask here. We have to sign this tax form. I'd like a motion to adjourn this regular meeting and move into executive session. The purpose of the executive session is to discuss some security matters at the school system.
You're going to executive
Yeah.
session. When you come out, then you're going to adjourn afterward, after. you-
Oh, I got that. Well, I have to go in executive session the first. Yeah. I need a motion for that.
So motion, I'll,
Tom,
yeah.
second. All in favor of moving into executive second, Tom
I second.
and Colm was a second. All in favor? Aye, opposed?
Aye.
None?
And we're recording.
Okay. We're now out of executive session. Okay, I will need for item 12 on the agenda, a motion to approve the it's the appropriation and bond authorization for the,
I need to read it.
Vote to come out.
that's what I was saying. You guys
Well,
are
we-
laughing.
We did not do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we have to, did.
Well, let's
did
take
we
a
come
motion
out
to-
of
let's take a-
Executive session. Okay,
Yeah.
we're out. Okay, so,
I thought we needed to have a vote for that, but
Yeah.
apparently we don't. Okay,
so I need to,
was with you, right?
so you want to introduce it and then,
I just did. So item
Okay, so
12
you
on the
want me to read
agenda, we need a motion to approve this. If you could read the authorization, it'd be great.
resolution authorizing an appropriation of $936,940 for the school security 2023 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $936,940.
Okay, thank
All
you,
right.
Judy. I need a motion.
Motion.
Maria, second.
Second.
Michael, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None, so moved.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that is it. That's our agenda for the night. Great work, everybody, all year long. Ann, a big thank you. Round of applause for Ann. You did a
Oh,
great job. Thank you so much. And if there's no other business, no motion to adjourn.
Yeah, wow.
Michael, second, $6 million man. Paul,
I'm giving Michael.
all in favor?
Oh.
Close none.
Tonight.
Oh,
Oh,
my. I don't know what to make that.